anything.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
"24 hours that put the Middle East on the brink."
The Defence Secretary confirms British forces helped to shoot down Iranian missiles heading towards Israel in a bid to curb the escalating tensions in the region.
This comes after Tehran fired a wave of at least 180 rockets, including dozens of ballistic missiles at Israeli cities.
Sir Keir Starmer addressed the nation following the attack.
Make no mistake, Britain stands full square against such violence. We support Israel's reasonable demand for the security of its people.
GB News Home Affairs editor Mark White has the story.
Well, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Iran has made a big mistake and will pay the price. Reports from US media outlets reporting that that attack on Iran could come within days.
Tory leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch slams civil servants, suggesting 10% of them should be locked up.
Yes, Kemi Badenoch continues to make controversial comments. That's what her team think of as being cut through. But we will hear from all the four leadership candidates. They will make speeches later this morning on the last day of Conservative conference here in Birmingham.
And among them, Robert Jenrick and James Cleverly hit out at Reform UK, dubbing the party a pale imitation of the Tories. We'll be hearing Nigel Farage's response later this morning.
Prime Minister will travel to Brussels in a bid to improve relations with the EU. He aims to deliver a broad-based security pact, secure borders and tackle trade barriers. Your views welcome.
And in sport this morning, well, Arsenal beat Paris Saint-Germain 2-0 in the Champions League last night. Manchester City scored 4 against Slovan Bratislava, who are just happy to be there. And less happy, Celtic shipped 7 goals in Dortmund.
A cold wind blowing today and a bit of a drab start, but generally getting a little bit brighter with some sunny spells coming through and drier and finer weather on the way for most of us through Thursday as well. Join me later for a full forecast.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster. It's just gone 6:02 and this is GB News Breakfast.
Now, a lot of news from the Middle East last night, breaking late.
Both the UK and the United States have confirmed they were involved in an operation to shoot down over 180 Iranian missiles fired at Israel.
The Defence Minister, John Healey, said that forces played their part to prevent further escalation in the region.
Well, the attack came in retaliation to Israel's air and ground campaign in Lebanon against the Iranian-backed militia group Hezbollah and the assassination of their leader on Friday.
Israel employed its famous Iron Dome defence system to shoot down missiles that were incoming.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer last night delivered a message.
I utterly condemn this attempt by the Iranian regime to harm innocent Israelis. I am deeply concerned that the region is on the brink, and I'm deeply concerned about the risk of miscalculation. I want to repeat my advice to British nationals who are still in Lebanon. You must leave now.
Let's go to Mark White. He's going to tell us more in this situation, and the Prime Minister speaking after 10 o'clock last night about the seriousness of this whole situation.
Yes, and soon after the Prime Minister spoke, because he wouldn't talk about any potential UK military involvement, we got that confirmation from the Defence Secretary, John Healey, that the UK did indeed play a part in helping to, we think, bring down a number of missiles. And we believe, although the UK government hasn't confirmed it, that it was the involvement of RAF Typhoon aircraft along with a tanker support aircraft over the region that helped Israel out in going after these missiles. A real, very significant barrage of ballistic missiles into Israel, 2 separate waves of missile attacks following about 20 minutes after each other. And you can see from the images there the speed that some of these ballistic missiles came down. We understand that Iran used some of its very latest hypersonic missiles. Now, what the Israeli government has said is that they, with the help of their aerial defence array, which is the Iron Dome system you were talking about, but a range of other missile defence systems that are aligned to this defence array, managed to intercept the vast majority of these ballistic missiles. There were very worrying images, though, of missiles impacting the ground. What we understand is the sophisticated way in which this missile defence system works is that it pinpoints the trajectory of ballistic missiles, and those that it deems are not going to affect populated areas, are going to land in the open, are just allowed to impact the ground. The missiles from the defence system are very expensive, very precious to the Israelis. They want to use them on the ballistic missiles that they believe are going to impact populated areas.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. We go to Dan Fairman now. Dan is a Middle East affairs analyst. And Dan, just want to say that a lot of the reason why those missiles did not reach their targets is down to Britain and Britain's involvement in all of this. What do you know?
Yeah, you know, for the last decade and a half or so, Israel's been working with its allies to build a regional defense architecture. So it's not just the Aerodome, it's a number of systems, both in Israel and around the region, radar arrays, different kinds of interceptors coming from different angles and different locations around the region. And it is this system collectively that is able to prevent any of those 180 ballistic projectiles from harming Israeli civilians. In fact, ironically, and kind of just goes to highlight the absurdity of this entire Iranian attack on Israel. The only person that was killed was a poor, innocent Palestinian man who was hit in the West Bank town of Jericho by one of these missiles.
Dan, what is the situation? Is Israel at war with Iran?
Israel's been at war with Iran, unfortunately, since Iran launched that war 20 years ago. Iran has been waging an incessant and unceasing effort to harm Israel, to pressure Israel, to harm anything connected to Israel around the region. And it flares up from time to time for the public eye. But unfortunately, this is a war that has been ongoing for the last 2 decades. And Israel is constantly on guard, trying to limit, trying to interfere, trying to intercept, trying to thwart these Iranian plans. Ironically, while those such as your prime minister over there call for de-escalation, the only thing that can force bad actors in the region, radical actors like Iran, to back down is that they understand that their threat of force is far inferior to anything that the West can bring to the table. And so it's important to stand strong and essentially to put Iran in its place at times like these.
Israel has said they will strike back, but at a time of their own choosing. What do you make of that?
It means that these kinds of provocations cannot be left unanswered. Iran is trying to reset the calculus whereby its main proxy element fires thousands and thousands of missiles and rockets at northern Israel for the past year. Mind you, 80,000 Israelis have been homeless from the northern border for the last year because of the escalation, unprovoked, by the way. Israel has no claims in Lebanon. It has no troops in Lebanon. It wants nothing to do with Lebanon. This is pure escalation. And when Israel finally decides to do something about the Iranian proxy that's been harassing it and making life untenable for the last year, then Iran itself steps in. So Iran is constantly escalating, and if left to its own, it will continue to escalate, continue to pressure, and continue to try to reset the rules of the game. It's imperative that Israel and all its allies and all the West and all the moderate countries around the region make it clear that Iran does not set the rules of escalation in the region and not be allowed to fire at will, unprovoked, and that it will have to answer a price for this in one way or another.
Iran did tip off the United States ahead of these strikes. Israel, of course, doesn't do that. And I just want to get your opinion on the words of the Jordanian foreign minister. Now, he has no sympathy for Hezbollah. Jordan has no sympathy for Hamas, is not in the pockets of Iran, but is asking the world's media to question Israel. What is your end game here? Those were his words, because what their actions are leading to is further war upon further war, and the further, I suppose you could say, radicalisation of any of those younger generations. It's becoming a generational disaster.
It sounds like pure hypocrisy to me, to be honest with you. And I think the Jordanians understand that they're playing this game. I think that they understand that without the support of the West, without the support of Israel, there is no Jordanian regime, to be honest. And they have to placate their public that they frankly have allowed to be radicalized over the years. Israel did absolutely nothing to provoke Lebanon, to provoke Hezbollah, to provoke Iran, to provoke the Houthis, another Iranian proxy in Yemen. Did nothing to provoke Hamas, who attacked on October 7th.
If I may interrupt you, I suppose his point is there's no question, of course, Israel has the right to defend itself, but the question is a military response going to resolve this, and does it not need all of those involved to really try, once again, as President Biden has been urging, and indeed the West have been urging, to try and find some sort of political diplomatic solution to all of this? Because all we can see now, really, from all sides, is this escalating and growing into a regional, and dare I say, possibly even a world war.
Unfortunately, when one actor has no actual claims and nothing that can be solved diplomatically, I'd be glad to hear it. I'd be glad to hear it from the Iranians. I'd be glad to hear it from any of the regional actors. What is it that they seek to achieve? We were always taught in military academies that war is diplomacy by other means. What is it the Iranians want to achieve? What is it that Hezbollah wants to achieve? What is it that the Houthis want to achieve? These are all Iranian puppets, by the way. So we'd be glad to hear what they want to achieve. In the meantime, the only thing that I can possibly fathom is that the only way to prevent an escalation is to show the Iranians just how absolute folly any of their military actions are, to show them that Israel's military power is absolutely superior, that it's backed by a coalition of Western and moderate Arab powers who stand strong in the face of such extremism and in the face of such escalation. And unfortunately, our history with the Islamic Republic of Iran, which goes back to 1979, shows that the only thing that can get the Iranians to back down is a superior show of force, because what they want from the region is nothing credible, nothing that one can sit around the table and negotiate. Israel has always shown itself to be a good faith actor to sit and negotiate and forge diplomatic ties. The Abraham Accords are an absolute proof of that. The Oslo years were absolute proofs of that. And so I'd be glad for anyone in the UK or anyone here in the Middle East to tell us what is it that the Iranians want that is reasonable and legitimate. And you'll find that Israel would be the first willing to sit down at the table and discuss in diplomatic measures. In the meantime, unfortunately, they are a bully entity that seeks to pressure, that seeks to intimidate, and seeks to use military force, knowing full well that while they do not have superior military capability, that too many in the world these days are hesitant and always seek to run to the halls of the ceasefire. Unfortunately, when the Iranian side has no credible claims or demands, I'm not really sure what there is to discuss with them.
Well, what have they got as a consequence? Iran, I'm talking about here. What does this do for them? I mean, obviously, they've reared their head. America has responded. Britain has responded on this. Israel has responded. What have they done to themselves on the world stage? Have they forwarded their cause in any way?
Frankly, I think they've embarrassed themselves, if anything. They launched 180 of their most advanced projectiles at a cost of millions of dollars per projectile. By the way, I think it's a travesty to the Iranian people who, for the last 10 years, have had to choose between medicine and putting meat on the table because their regime is throwing billions of dollars at supporting proxy elements on these unnecessary wars. They've showed that for the second time now that they can launch hundreds of their most advanced projectiles at their so-called enemy in the region, and not a single one gets through. They felt, if I have to put myself in the head of the Iranian decision maker, that they're being embarrassed time and again, that their capabilities are being exposed as frankly fraudulent time and again over the last weeks, over the last months, and that they had to do something in order to save face. Saving face is a big deal in Middle Eastern politics.
Dan, does the regime speak for the Persian people?
From everything that we understand here in Israel, from everything I've understood over the last few decades, the Persian people are absolutely sick of this regime that keeps dragging them into conflicts with the West. These people who are overwhelmingly moderate, overwhelmingly educated, overwhelmingly peace-loving people, and who have no inherent problem with Israel or with any other of the moderate powers in the Middle East. And this radicalized regime keeps spending upwards of around $10 billion a year on supporting various proxy armies around the Middle East, while people in Iran are suffering from high inflation and suffering from sanctions and suffering from a lack of funding for their own life because of this radicalized regime. So no, the Iranian people, by and large, are not with this regime.
Dan, really appreciate your analysis. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Appreciate talking to you.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much indeed. At 6:17, we're going to take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning. And overnight, the Democrat Tim Walz and the Republican J.D. Vance have disagreed over international politics, immigration and abortion rights during the vice presidential debate. That's as moderators muted the candidates' microphones during a clash over Haitian migrants.
We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
we want to have.
app has not been on the books
since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
A list of P. Diddy's accomplices is set to be released as part of a new wave of bombshell lawsuits. The rapper is facing allegations of sexual nature from 120 new accusers. The prosecution attorney has claimed the names listed will shock the public. This comes after the 54-year-old was charged with sex trafficking, something he has denied.
Buckingham Palace has announced Her Royal Highness Princess Beatrice and her husband Edoardo Mopelli-Mozzi are expecting their second child together. Due in the early spring, the new arrival will be a sibling for the couple's daughter Sienna and the princess's stepson Wolfie. The king has been informed and both families say they are delighted with the news. Right, still to come, the Tory leadership candidate, Kemi Badenoch, has said that 10% of civil servants should be locked up. Find out why.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was watching, yes, Prime Minister last night on BBC4, and very, very funny, the way they portray the role of the civil servants and as to who really is in charge.
Well, should they be locked up? We'll be discussing that in just a moment.
That was part of the story last night.
There you go.
Yeah. Where Sir Humphrey had, Jim Hacker, the Prime Minister, had spoken about something that only the civil service are allowed to speak about, and then Sir Humphrey was facing jail as a result. But there we go, back after this.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday, we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan Tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time for the new Tories. Labour are selfish, greedy socialists. Wealth is not a dirty word, and conservatism with a smile. They're the messages that the four Conservative leadership candidates will be delivering in their speeches at conference today.
OK. Kemi Badenoch faces more criticism for suggesting 1 in 10 civil servants are so bad at their jobs they should be
jailed. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick and James Cleverly are taking aim at reform, and Nigel Farage claiming that they want to make the party redundant.
Well, Farage is coming into the studio here this morning live to rebuke what they are saying and to stick up for his party. So be very interesting to hear
20 past 8, that is, so stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer will meet with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen to reset the UK's relationship with Brussels post-Brexit.
OK, let's go to Birmingham. GB News political correspondent Catherine Foster. Catherine Foster is across all of this. Good morning, Catherine.
Yes, good morning to both of you. It's the final day of Conservative conference here in Birmingham. And yes, yesterday we had Kemi Badenoch making headlines again. She has a habit of doing that, doesn't she? With those comments, which were not serious, but saying that up to 10% of civil servants were very, very bad, should be in prison bad, is what she said, accusing them of leaking official secrets, undermining ministers, etc. Also, Robert Jenrick and James Cleverly were both doing hour-long Q&As with our very own political editor, Chris Hope. Among the many things that they said, that they wanted to retire Nigel Farage, make him redundant. And Nigel Farage, understandably not very happy about this. He said that they seem to be obsessed with him and with reform. And he picked up on another comment that Robert Jenrick made about reform voters, saying that they were our people. Nigel Farage was saying, well, look, you know, they don't have some divine right to the centre-right vote. But today we will hear 20-minute speeches for all four leadership candidates setting out their stall. Robert Jenrick's likely to focus on cracking down on migration, on house building. James Cleverly saying that he can unite the party. He's going to try to give a sense of optimism and enthusiasm. Tom Tugendhat talking about a new Conservative revolution, and I think we'll definitely hear about his military background. That's something that he regards as a real strength and is indeed popular with many. And Kemi Badenoch talking about needing wealth creation, and also likely to say that the left never left, and that the Blair-Brown consensus of state intervention, etc., has got to go and has continued under the last 14 years. So it'll be very interesting to see these final pitches here at conference. Then it is for MPs to decide in the next week or so which two go to the members, and on November the 2nd, yeah, we're still a month away from it, we will find out who is going to be the leader of the Conservatives and the leader of the official opposition.
It's very much indeed.
There we go. The weather situation all a bit messy, a bit over the place this week. There's a bit of sunshine, there's a lot of rain.
Did you see all the figures out yesterday?
Which said?
Oh, about how September was the wettest on record, I think, for England. I made a note of them, but I just couldn't get over it. Where did I write this yesterday? Oh, I can't remember. But anyway, awful month for rain in England. Dry for Scotland. And some counties got above double their usual rain for September. That's my professional analysis. Let's get a more serious forecast. Here's Alex.
We haven't even got to the bad bit yet. Let's go.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having a bit of a drab start today, but it should get a little brighter as the day goes on. Many of us will be dry as well, but there's still a keen and cold, gusty wind blowing along the east coast of England, and quite a lot of cloud across England and Wales this morning. Some outbreaks of rain here and there. We'll continue with some showers across East Anglia and the southeast, particularly for Essex and Suffolk and Kent. They'll be on and off through the day. Elsewhere, though, many places dry. Should brighten up a little bit over Wales, northern England, and sunny spells for most of the day across Scotland and Northern Ireland. On the chilly side, particularly with that wind coming in from the North Sea, quite gusty conditions at times for Wales and southwest England also, and throughout the day we will continue to see these showers just drifting in across East Anglia, maybe some getting into the home counties, certainly across Kent, a few heavy showers keeping going. But further north and west, we'll see that cloud breaking up over Wales and northern England, and by and large a fine day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's a bit chilly first thing, and temperatures struggling a little bit, even with some sunshine through the afternoon, and quite quickly this evening those temperatures will be falling away once more because the winds are pretty light here, and the winds, that noticeable and cold breeze along the east coast, will also tend to ease through the night. Still a few showers getting into parts of Kent, East Anglia, maybe some returning to Lincolnshire as well, but away from eastern England, a dry night, a clear night, and those temperatures really dipping down, well down into single figures, even in towns and cities. So rural spots are likely to see some pockets of frost over northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Could be a little bit of mist here and there early doors, but that should disappear fairly sharply. And for many, it's a good-looking day tomorrow. Still a bit more cloud and one or two showers for Kent. The odd shower is possible elsewhere over the Midlands and northern England, but most places dry and bright tomorrow. Bit more in the way of sunshine. Those winds a little bit lighter, so feeling a touch warmer with temperatures in the teens.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, from downpours now to an overpouring of generosity from us to you, here is the Great British Giveaway.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Antrim, the A26 Frosses Road is closed each way between Glarriford and Clough Mills because of an accident. The M65 in Lancashire is closed in both directions between junctions 8 and 10, between Accrington and Burnley after an accident. On the M1 in Derbyshire, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed northbound for an investigation between junctions 28 and 29 near Mansfield. On the M54 in Staffordshire, the slip roads are closed each way at junction 1, the Wolverhampton and Cannock turn for emergency repairs. The M4 in Cardiff is closed eastbound from junction 32, the Corriton interchange to junction 30 at Cardiff Gate after an accident. And in London, the North Circular is blocked eastbound by an accident at the Cooks Ferry interchange at Walthamstow with queues from the Kenninghall interchange. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Princess of Wales has begun planning her annual Christmas Carol concert, marking her return to royal duties after chemotherapy. Princess Catherine held a meeting at Windsor Castle to discuss the events, which will be broadcast this Christmas as she continues to ease back into public engagements. A wonderful story, and I'm joined now by the royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, fantastic stuff. This will be just the kind of royal Christmas message we really, really want, and fantastic news about Catherine's return. Tell us more about this amazing event.
Well, you're absolutely right, because Together at Christmas, which is her carol concert, it's been an annual since 2021. It's marvellous news because she's moving back toward royal duties, that's absolutely clear. And the question is, of course, when will we see her next? And, we're all looking forward perhaps to seeing her on Remembrance Day. I'm sure that is now a definite possibility at the Cenotaph, and subsequently, very definitely, for one of the highlights of the year at Westminster Abbey, which is her concert.
When can we expect any details, for example, of the choice of carols? Because, that's what people really want to know. What are the details? When are they going to come out?
Well, I don't know when they will be released. Remember, even now, these meetings and these details, they're being very, very carefully managed. What we've got is very, very good news, but there's no doubt, as she made clear in her recent video message, there is still some way to go, and being cancer-free is her priority, obviously. So let's hope, and also let's hope we might see her at the Albert Hall for the Festival of Remembrance. Just a thought.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Big night of European action last night on the sports front. We got Paul here to talk us through it. Some really good results, and what a disaster for Celtic.
I know. We'll work our way up to Celtic, shall we? Arsenal played Paris Saint-Germain, and Paris Saint-Germain, who are like, I'd liken them to the French Harlem Globetrotters. I say the French Harlem Globetrotters because that's what they do.
Do you remember the tune to that? Did you watch?
No, you're doing the wrong tune.
Yeah.
Where?
Oh no.
What day?
As in the basketballers.
Yeah, what day
I've
were
actually met them, and I've done some basketball,
No.
and I scored a slam dunk.
I
with them.
remember this.
Yeah, I'll show you the video. I was pregnant, 9 months pregnant.
Who was it? Was it Meadowlark Lemon? Was it Curly?
I don't know. Yeah, it might have been Curly.
Was it Curly? Yeah.
Very good, very
Hold on,
good.
what was that tune you were doing? That wasn't that.
It was.
No.
Yes.
No.
I'm right.
It's Sweet Georgia Brown.
Maybe they had two. That was the theme music of the programme on a Friday.
Yeah, and that was this cartoon, wasn't it?
Series, yeah.
I always wanted the tracksuit top because they had like this bit at the back with the stars on and the stripes.
Yeah. All I knew is they always won.
Yeah, I know.
And it was always in the last second of the game.
And if they were that good, why didn't they just enter the NBA or something? If they were that good.
If they were that good.
Yeah, but they weren't. Anyway, Arsenal 2, the Harlem Globetrotters of France, PSG, although they're not anymore because you used to get Neymar and Mbappe was playing for them, and of course Lionel Messi played for them. They've all gone now, and they're just not. It was all about putting money into it because they wanted to win the Champions League. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen this year either. So Arsenal 2, PSG 0. Very good performance by Arsenal. Slovan Bratislava from Slovakia, who we talked about yesterday, and got hit for 5 when they played Celtic the other week. Got hit for just 4 by Manchester City, and Man City, very easy for them. Although the fans in Bratislava, they were just cheering all the way through. They didn't mind. They were quite happy because they're just happy to be there.
They were just happy there.
They're just happy to be there.
You couldn't be happy if you were a Celtic supporter, though.
No,
That's
not really.
Quite humiliating, that score.
Yeah, it is. Borussia Dortmund 7, Celtic 1. Unbeaten Celtic were until last night. What a way to break that. So, and there's Brendan Rodgers saying before, it's a new defensively secure Celtic. We're better up front. We're going to do something this year. Let's hear what Brendan Rodgers had to say after the game, shall we?
It was a tough watch, to be honest. We weren't quite at our best, and they showed why they're a top team. So we didn't make the start that we wanted, and then I've just said to the players afterwards, I don't think I've been involved in a game where I felt that every single mistake that we made got punished. And that's the level. It's any misplaced pass or moment that they had, it just seemed to end up in the back of the net.
Not a happy man.
What's it like having to go into a press conference like that?
Yeah, but
what
listen,
can you say?
I was watching it last night, and Peter Schmeichel, one of the best goalkeepers this country's ever seen, so he's sitting there watching his own son, Kasper
Schmeichel,
in goal for Celtic, and 7 goals go past him.
I think you're fed up with 3. Then 4, there we are, there's Peter in the middle there. The 5th one goes in. I think you probably couldn't care less by the time you get to 7, because it just continues, it carries on. You know, Kasper Schmeichel, he conceded 7, which is 2 more than he'd let in every Champions League game he's played in combined. Played in 5, never let in that many goals, and now 7 all in one go. But that's the problem. When you've got a goalkeeper, it's all very easy, and this is at lower levels. When you get kids play, it's all very well to point to the goalkeeper and go, oh, you let that man... The defence's job is to stop
It's
that.
a collective
but
thing,
it's
yeah.
so often... Well, I knew there's a goalkeeper, an old goalkeeper called Perry Suckling, who I know very well. And Perry played for Crystal Palace when they lost to Liverpool 9-0. And he was playing for Palace at the time. He never lived it down. And it's one of those things he still doesn't like to talk about.
Yeah.
But... Perry, it's not your fault. It's OK, let it go. But it's never necessarily the goalkeeper.
Let's switch sports now. Baseball, Major League Baseball in the USA. One of the big names down through the years, Pete Rose.
Yeah, Pete Rose. If you say the name Pete Rose in America, everybody will know who Pete Rose is or was. He died at the age of 83. One of the greatest baseball players ever. So 1963 to 86. They called him Charlie Hustle, which that's your nickname, isn't it, Isabel?
Sounds like a song.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie Hustle.
Why is it my nickname?
Huh?
Why is it my nickname? What's the inference there?
It's nice.
Tell me later.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just bants. OK, got it.
3-time World Series winner.
Sorry.
If anybody asks you to explain your joke, you know you're dead. So, longest hitting streak, 44. Most hits, 4,256. So, one of the greatest baseball players ever, but he's not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And the reason for this is that towards the end of his career, there was an inquiry about the fact that he'd been betting on games. Now, it's the biggest thing, the worst thing you could do to baseball, because back in 1919, during the World Series, there was the famous story about the White Sox throwing the World Series, and it was Shoeless Joe Jackson. There's been so many films about this. So after that happened, any betting on baseball, it's absolute no-no. So anyway, he was found that he'd been betting on his own games, not betting against himself, but betting for himself. So he was thrown out of baseball, banned for life. So never could he go to a baseball game. The chance of him being in the Hall of Fame, although one of the greatest players of all time, is out, so he was banned. So it's really quite a sad tale from this great player. Once he'd got done for this at the end of his career, then that was it, and he was just completely excommunicated from the whole game. So it's quite sad.
Yeah, very sad.
Poor old Charlie Hustle. He was doing a Charlie Hustle.
We have something more uplifting for us next time,
Yeah,
Ryan.
that was depressing.
Yeah, sorry, and now he's dead.
For the moment, Paul,
that's all I've got
You're
for
dead
you.
now to us. We'll see you later on.
Thanks, Charlie.
We're
Appreciate
opening
it.
up the newspapers right after the break, and we'll see you back here for that.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
My kingdom for a voice. Scientists have, I can't believe this story, scientists have incredibly recreated the voice of Richard III using both his skull shape and a knowledge of medieval speech patterns. Me neither. The result is that the king, who was famously killed at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, would have spoken in English close to that of a man from modern-day Yorkshire or Somerset. Let's take a listen.
The sun shines with no less light and splendour, nor does it suffer any diminution of its strength.
Let's discuss this further with Yvonne Morley-Chisholm, the voice coach behind the project, who spent 10 years researching how the monarch would have sounded. Yvonne, you can probably see from my face, I have no idea how this works. Can you enlighten me as to what all this is about?
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Dawn. So I had a mad idea 10 years ago. I normally work with actors where we have a recording of a historical person, and we do something called vocal profiling to train the actor who's going to be performing on stage or screen to move their tongue tip, their jaw, their lips, everything, and get behind the personality of who they're playing. We obviously have quite a lot of that missing from Richard. We don't have a recording of him, but I wondered how far we could go. And a key player in this has been and is Professor Caroline Wilkinson, who over a decade ago created his face, first of all, from his skull. Now, on the day we, as Shakespeare would say, shuffle off our mortal coil, every little dent and dimple in the bones says how fit and strong the muscles were. So I thought, OK, we know what his face could do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Time is 6:43. We're going through the papers. Let's take a look quickly at the newspaper front pages. The Daily Mail leading with the Iron Dome holding firm against Iran's 200 missile blitz. Now Israel vows vengeance.
Daily Express focused to American reaction. The nation threatens a severe response to Iran's missile attacks.
Daily Telegraph, Iran attacks Israel as Starmer condemns Iranian aggression following a call with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Here's the Times. Middle East erupts as a gunman and his accomplice killed 6 people. This was a rampage in the southern suburb of Tel Aviv.
The Sun reporting hellfire as the IDF begin their first ground assault in Lebanon in 18 years. And we're joined this morning by Emma Wolfe and Fraser Myers to take a look at what is inside the papers. And Fraser, we've talked quite a lot already on the programme about the developments in the last 24 hours. But what we haven't discussed at all is this terror attack that happened in Tel Aviv, which is on the front of the Times. I don't know if you mind sort of talking about that a little bit, because this has kind of been overshadowed by these missiles that have been fired in. But I think it's worth reflecting, you know, this terror that is being wrought on Israelis at the moment.
Definitely. So the missiles, thankfully, no one was injured in the missile attack. The Iron Dome did its job and protected people, and people were in their shelters and things like that. But at the same time, there was this terror attack in a southern suburb of Tel Aviv. A gunman killed. 2 gunmen have been arrested or killed, from the West Bank. And it's just a reminder that, you know, everything is kind of kicking off at the moment. It's not just Iran attacking Israel. It's not just
kicking off everywhere, Fraser. If you look at, you know, whatever's happening in Ukraine, Russia, whatever's happening in Africa, people don't even understand what's happening in Africa. Yeah. And this whole Middle Eastern hodgepodge, Isabel said earlier, could this be the trigger to a world war situation? And I think it's
a legitimate question, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think, yes, I hope not, of course. Yeah. The question is is the strike from Iran in particular, is that a kind of performative, you know, do they feel as if they have to respond, particularly to the attack on Lebanon, to the attack on the death of Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah? I think they felt that they had to show some kind of response, flex their muscles. Yeah. But I think
I think what's interesting coming out about Iran is how and if the regime represents the people, the Persian people there in all of this, and there may be a fracture coming there between what they do and who they represent.
I think that they don't represent the people, and you've seen, you know, over the years, huge protests, often kicked off over by the morality police, you know, telling women to, or, you know, beating up and killing women over not wearing the hijab. There's a huge disjuncture between the people and the regime, and I think that they recognise that to a certain extent. There is, you know, they would be reluctant to wage an all-out war. I think Iran's strategy is more to grind Israel down, get it bogged down into conflict.
It doesn't seem to be working, though, does it?
No, it doesn't. And what's been quite heartening is how successful, with the deployment of quite amazing technology, great intelligence, that Israel has been able to decapitate, some quite nasty organisations like Hezbollah.
But where this escalates in a worrying way for me is I've been reading reports that Israel may now target the nuclear infrastructure that Iran has within its country, within its state. Now, that becomes hugely dangerous, in my view. And obviously, we heard just a couple of weeks ago when Starmer was in Washington and meeting President Biden that Putin had just shared nuclear secrets with Iran. We don't know how far they've got with uranium enrichment. And that becomes a very, very dangerous thing to target nuclear infrastructure. This is when things escalate rapidly.
Yeah, and it's when Russia and China potentially get involved, if they are interested in getting involved, that's when, you start to worry about the sort of World War III type situation.
Our enemy's enemy is our friend, because I believe it's actually China that is stopping Putin from using nuclear weapons, which in itself is, you don't expect China to be helping us out in all of this.
It's clear that part of Israel's motivation here is very much about kind of trying to neutralise that nuclear capability. But for me, and look, all of this was inevitable. There was no way that Iran were not going to respond in the most ferocious way to the killing of Nasrallah. And also the fact that they feel they feel on the back foot on that. They feel that they have, that targeting Hezbollah makes them extremely angry. For me, what's lacking is any kind of international leadership on this. I mean, we've got a pretty much lame duck president in the White House, if he's kind of conscious at all. And there seems to be almost nothing coming from the UK either, if either the UK or the US have any influence.
Well, we were very slow compared to the Americans late last night to admit that our RAF jets were involved in any way in supporting Israel. We're the junior partner, and even more junior at the moment. But you're right, there's no
and the influence has really shifted, hasn't it?
You can find faults in all sides in all of this, frankly. Israel can't claim entire purity. You look at the questionable proportionality of what they've done in Gaza with the 40 to 50,000 civilians deaths there in response to the horrendous and barbaric attack on October the 7th. And also the occupation of the West Bank as well, also highly controversial. So there's no actor here who is above, condemnation, but there needs to be an international voice that can find a way forward, because this is just going to...
Because what is certain is that it's going to continue like this, retaliation after retaliation and tit for tat, which is such an alarming situation.
Could I bring in a story that I'm just looking at here, which is lovely, and it's front page of the Daily Star today, and it says, Queen's funeral horsey gets an OBE, and this horse is called Lord Firebrand. He led the funeral procession for Queen Elizabeth II, and he's been given an OBE.
Yeah, you could award animals OBEs.
Nor did I. How does it kneel to get to...
How does it what?
How does it kneel to receive
very well trained.
sword?
It's like a dressage style.
That's very, very nice.
Yeah,
that's very nice.
There's levity in there.
There's two doggy sniffer dogs and things that have got the animal equivalent of all of this as well.
That's what the honours system should be for, isn't it, really? Alan Bates and nice horses and things like that.
Do they get treats?
Not cronies.
Because presumably they don't understand the award, but they would understand a nice treat of some kind.
Oh, an extra carrot in their mush.
Here's the thing, though. It's funny you bring that up, Fraser. You've got a story which, in the Times, which talks about, and I'm a great believer in this, the longer I study this and think about this, dogs do speak a language, and we speak a language, and there is a certain amount of overlap. We're not all totally there, but it will come to a day when we can talk to them and they can relate back to us. So what's the story in the Times saying?
So there's a study saying that essentially, dogs process sounds at a slower rate than we do. They make sounds at a slower rate than we do. Humans are very fast talkers. But we instinctively slow down when we talk to dogs and we give them instructions. So the study is saying that we have some sort of instinctive knowledge of how dogs understand and how we can communicate with each other, essentially.
Did you say you think that eventually one day we're going to be able to...
Absolutely. And
I don't know why I'm drawing more out.
No, I don't know why you are. I mean, I spend a lot of time with a woman who's the top primate professor in the world, and she will sit and talk to a monkey or a chimpanzee, and it will talk back to her. She has tuned into the lingo. It is absolutely humbling to watch. Now, the same thing exists with horses, with dogs, whatever, and one day we'll all be able to do the same thing. I think it's fascinating. The whole Dr. Dolittle thing could actually be a reality.
People are working on AI to do human-to-animal translations, but I sort of wonder, how do you check that it's right?
This reminds me of speaking to young children. You have to be quite simple. You have to slow it down. There's no point, you know, barking 10 different instructions at them at the same time. They simply can't process it.
Also, a lot of the communication, I think, with animals is body language. And tone. And
sense. They sense things.
There's always so many studies of dogs. There's never... I think cats are, like, you know, discriminated against. But anyway, we blink at our cat because we think it's blowing kisses. We must be mad. But we're all like this going... Oh, hello, Hector. And he blinks back, and we're sending each other kisses.
Right, you think that's what Hector interprets that as. See, that's interesting as well. But there definitely is. I mean, you probably have a language with your pet, whatever your animal is, and you understand. But as you say, Fraser, you just have to look at them and see the response from the animal. There we go.
There we go. Enjoyed that. OK, history repeating. Oh, I just want to do lightweight things after all this World War III misery. What's this, Emma? Tell me more. Margaret Thatcher faces Brian Walden.
Well, this is fascinating, and the imagery on this is in the Mirror today.
This is the 1989 interview, October 1989, the sort of ITV showdown between Brian Walden and Margaret...
Celia Walden.
Maybe.
Margaret...
Surprised. Shall I Google it whilst you're talking?
Probably, I was going to say Celia Walden and Margaret Thatcher. This was just after the resignation of the Tory Chancellor, Nigel Lawson. And then she went on to resign, was it just 1 year later. And so Channel 4, for some reason, have made a dramatisation of this interview. I don't understand this drive to make dramatisations of interviews. Why not just go back and watch the original? Like the Emily Maitlis thing. I mean... Anyway.
There's two Emily Maitlis programmes.
Two versions of an interview which only took place a few years ago. I don't understand. Why not watch the original interview? I mean, the interview between Brian Walden and Margaret Thatcher is still available. So Channel 4 have made a dramatisation starring Steve Coogan and Harriet Walters. And that is going to be on Channel 4. And it's, you know... I don't know how many people are going to watch it.
He had 4 sons.
Who had 4 sons?
Brian Walden.
But it may be a niece.
Oh, 4 sons, so she's not related then.
No. Well, there might be.
Guys, well, thank you very much indeed. This whole interview that we've been doing with Fraser and Emma will probably be recreated sometime in the future on some subscription channel. In the meantime, Alex Deakin.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having a bit of a drab start today, but it should get a little brighter as the day goes on. Many of us will be dry as well, but there's still a keen and cold, gusty wind blowing along the east coast of England, and quite a lot of cloud across England and Wales this morning. Some outbreaks of rain here and there. We'll continue with some showers across East Anglia and the southeast, particularly for Essex and Suffolk and Kent. They'll be on and off through the day. Elsewhere, though, many places dry. Should brighten up a little bit over Wales, northern England, and sunny spells for most of the day across Scotland and Northern Ireland. On the chilly side, particularly with that wind coming in from the North Sea, quite gusty conditions at times for Wales and southwest England also, and throughout the day we will continue to see these showers just drifting in across East Anglia, maybe some getting into the home counties, certainly across Kent, a few heavy showers keeping going. But further north and west, we'll see that cloud breaking up over Wales and northern England, and by and large a fine day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's a bit chilly first thing, and temperatures struggling a little bit, even with some sunshine through the afternoon, and quite quickly this evening those temperatures will be falling away once more because the winds are pretty light here, and the winds, that noticeable and cold breeze along the east coast, will also tend to ease through the night. Still a few showers getting into parts of Kent, East Anglia, maybe some returning to Lincolnshire as well, but away from eastern England, a dry night, a clear night, and those temperatures really dipping down, well down into single figures, even in towns and cities. So rural spots likely to see some pockets of frost over northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Could be a little bit of mist here and there early doors, but that should disappear fairly sharply And for many, it's a good-looking day tomorrow. Still a bit more cloud and 1 or 2 showers for Kent. The odd shower is possible elsewhere over the Midlands and northern England, but most places dry and bright tomorrow. Bit more in the way of sunshine. Those winds a little bit lighter, so feeling a touch warmer with temperatures in the teens.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Antrim, the A26 Frosses Road is closed each way between Glariford and Clockmills after an accident. The M65 in Lancashire is closed each way between junctions 8 and 10 between Accrington and Burnley after an accident. On the M1 in Derbyshire, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed northbound for an investigation between junctions 28 and 29 near Mansfield. It's taking around 20 minutes in the queues. The M4 in Cardiff is closed eastbound from junction 32 at the Corriton interchange to 30 at Cardiff Gate after an accident. In London, the North Circular's blocked eastbound by an accident just after the Cooks Ferry interchange at Chingford, with queues from Kenninghall interchange at Edmonton. And in East Sussex, the A267 is closed in both directions off the A272 at Cross in Hand after a petrol tanker overturned yesterday morning. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
24 hours that put the Middle East on the brink.
The Defence Secretary confirms British forces helped shoot down Iranian missiles heading towards Israel in a bid to curb the escalating tensions.
This comes after Tehran fired a wave of at least 180 rockets, including dozens of ballistic missiles, at Israeli cities.
The Prime Minister addressed the nation following the attack.
Make no mistake, Britain stands full square against such violence. We support Israel's reasonable demand for the security of its people.
More on this, let's go to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White.
Well, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Iran made a big mistake in launching these missiles towards Israel and that they will pay the price. A retaliatory strike could come within days.
Tory leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch is slamming civil servants, suggesting 10% of them should be locked up.
Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick, James Cleverly have hit out at Reform UK. They have dubbed the party a pale imitation of the Conservatives. We hear Nigel Farage's response at 8:20.
The Prime Minister is set to travel to Brussels today in a bid to improve relations with the EU post-Brexit. He aims to deliver a broad-based security pact to try and secure borders and to tackle trade barriers.
And in sport, in the New Look Champions League last night, Arsenal still unbeaten this season after beating PSG. Manchester City win in Slovakia as Celtic get pummeled, hammered, humiliated. Is that too much, do you think? Anyway, it all happened in Germany and they had 7 goals shipped against them. Talking to Germany, Bild newspaper have had the audacity to question Harry Kane's ability as Bayern Munich take on Aston Villa tonight.
A cold wind blowing today and a bit of a drab start, but generally getting a little bit brighter with some sunny spells coming through and drier and finer weather on the way for most of us through Thursday as well. Join me later for a full forecast.
7:02 on this Wednesday morning. A very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster and you're tuned in to GB News Breakfast.
the story that we're leading with this morning and developing overnight is in the Middle East.
Yeah, both the UK and the United States have confirmed that they conducted operations to shoot down over 180 Iranian missiles fired at Israel.
Defence Minister John Healey said British forces played their part in attempts to prevent further escalation.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer delivered this message to the nation last night.
The Iranian regime has launched over 200 ballistic missiles at civilian targets in Israel. It's too soon to assess the impact fully, but I utterly condemn this attempt by the Iranian regime to harm innocent Israelis, to escalate this incredibly dangerous situation and push the region ever closer to the brink. It cannot be tolerated. We stand with Israel and we recognise her right to self-defence in the face of this aggression. Iran must stop these attacks, together with its proxies like Hezbollah. Iran has menaced the Middle East for far too long. Chaos and destruction brought not just to Israel, but to the people they live amongst in Lebanon and beyond. Make no mistake, Britain stands full square against such violence. We support Israel's reasonable demand for the security of its people. I am deeply concerned that the region is on the brink, and I'm deeply concerned about the risk of miscalculation.
Well, joining us now is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Good morning to you, Mark. Anyone who was worried that Keir Starmer's government might have a different level of support for Israel need not worry, having heard that late last night. No question about our support for the nation.
No, in terms of Israel being directly attacked, there will always be assistance offered from the United Kingdom as Israel's other biggest ally, the United States, of course, also intervened to shoot down multiple missiles. You can look at the images. They're absolutely really shocking images out of Israel last night. We were watching these rockets coming in, and it looked as though these ballistic missiles clearly were impacting the ground, but we later got clarification from the Israeli Defense Forces that the vast majority of the ballistic missiles were shot down. However, others that were heading for unpopulated areas were allowed to impact those unpopulated areas, areas of the Negev desert and alike, because that aerial defense system, it's not just the Iron Dome, they have medium and long range missiles as well. They're very expensive, of course. It's a sophisticated system. It can check the trajectory of a missile, and if it's not heading into a populated area, often it will be allowed to impact the ground. But we're now in very clearly a dangerous situation, potentially of tit-for-tat escalation, because the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Iran has made a big mistake, that it will pay the price, and we understand from security sources that a strike directly on Iran could come within days, and depending on the level, the intensity of those Israeli strikes, that will determine what the next move from the Iranians is. If they feel that the attacks are of a sufficiently low level, that they will not lose face, that they don't feel they need to respond again, then perhaps, just like they did back in April, both sides can call it quits. But it's always a very dangerous game when you have one side launching missiles, another side retaliating. It can very quickly descend into full-scale war here.
Mark, we'll call it quits there. Thank you very much indeed. We go to former Middle East Minister Alistair Burt now for his reading, his perspective on what happened overnight. Alistair.
Good morning, Eamonn. It's obviously a further very serious escalation, which comes on the back of a number recently. It shows the danger of not having reached any ceasefire either in Gaza or in relation to Lebanon. And exactly as your correspondent said, and exactly as the Prime Minister said last night, the risk is that should one of the Iranian missiles get through to a civilian area in Israel, Israel has made it very clear the loss of civilian lives is very much a red line for it. Then you have a risk of a further response from Israel, and the need for diplomacy to work to try and break this cycle is even more acute than it earlier was.
You've obviously had experience in government dealing with the Middle East, which, as we know, has been, tense for generations now. What do you think are the chances that a back-channel resolution can be met? Or do you think it is more likely now that this tit-for-tat will continue? I mean, I'm reading some suggestions that Israel will be targeting nuclear infrastructure in Iran, which frankly makes my blood run cold.
Yes, I'm sure, and quite rightly so it should. In April, when Iran also launched an attack on Israel in response to Israel's killing of a number of its senior figures, then, again, there could have been further escalation from then, but some sort of balance held. Iran had responded to the death of its people, and it wasn't sufficient to cause serious issues for Israel. People felt that, fine, leave it there. The danger is this time Israel has promised a further response to the missile attack last night. Iran will be worried about its nuclear facilities, and it will be worried about the regime's survival. The Iranian regime is not popular in Iran. Its people have already complained about the amount of money and the damage to its economy from its overseas activities through its proxies in Syria and Yemen and elsewhere. So Iran will be worried about that. But of course, a strike on the nuclear facilities, Iran would take that as an extremely serious step. Iran cannot win a war against Israel and the United States, just as Israel cannot win a war in any conventional sense against Iran. But a great deal of damage can be done. And the region, which was looking for a very different sort of Middle East only a couple of years ago, with states reaching out to each other and wanting to avoid conflict, will be extremely concerned about the damage which could be done from a further flare-up between Israel and Iran.
Alistair, I'm fascinated as to how this develops politically and socially for a country like Iran. You just highlighted a few points there about how unpopular the regime is. So who are they acting for? What are they trying to achieve here? What are the consequences going to be? Israel saying they have grossly miscalculated on all of this. What are they implying?
Well, you're asking extremely pertinent questions about Iran. Many have been thinking for some time, what exactly does Iran want out of the situation? Iran has thrived on the conflict and the unrest in the region. Iran plainly sees Israel as an enemy. It has taken up the cause of the Palestinian people. It believes that Israel has, by disregarding the Palestinian cause for self-determination and a state, it's given Iran a purpose to support the Palestinian cause. But Iran still feels deeply many wounds from 1979 as it sees it. The Iraq-Iran war, the United Kingdom and the United States backed Saddam Hussein against Iran. Iran lost maybe 1 million people. Iran distrusts the West hugely and doesn't take seriously attempts to reconcile the area, believes it will always be working against the interests of Iran. The diplomacy that led to the nuclear deal in 2015 was designed partly to break that lack of trust. But then the Americans walked away from that deal, and that only heightened the sense in Tehran that really everything was conspiring against them.
What I'm getting at is, does this lead to some sort of divide or schism between the Persian people and the Iranian regime or not?
Given a free election, people doubt that the Iranian people would back the regime that's currently in place, as we saw from the demonstrations last year and the way they were very harshly dealt with in relation to women's rights. The regime has a very strong security grip. It has a grip through the economy and everything else. But thoughts that the Persian people, the Iranian people, would rise up against their government seem very far from reality. And the regime keeps a very strong grip, and it will portray, of course, an attack on its own soil as an attack on the whole of Iran. That's why a further escalation is perhaps so dangerous.
Can I ask you about Britain in all of this? For anybody at home thinking this is, obviously a worrying situation, but, it's a long way away and it doesn't involve me. We've had it confirmed by the British government that our military have now supported Israel, as they, quote, said, played their part. We understand RAF jets were used, and indeed the Defence Secretary has thanked British personnel for their courage and professionalism. We know that we also have Britons in Lebanon who may well take advantage of the last commercial flights coming out of the country, and also just the impact on the economy. If we have to increase our defence spending, that possibly means an increase in taxes for all of us who are already heavily taxed. We're seeing impact on shipping and all of our commodities costing more. The impact on oil, it does have a knock-on for all of us here, doesn't it?
You're right. The world is very interconnected. There's no place far away that doesn't concern the United Kingdom if something goes badly wrong. It's right that the United Kingdom acts to protect an ally, and the existence of the State of Israel is a fundamental for the United Kingdom government, as it is for many others. So that's why attempts to make sure that missiles don't get through and don't cause physical harm to Israel. That's why the United Kingdom was probably involved last night in shooting those missiles down. But should there be a conflagration in the Middle East, if there was more activity in the Red Sea that cut off trading routes, you could see an impact on foodstuffs and imports coming to the United Kingdom. You could see concern about oil because Iran may threaten to damage the oil supplies throughout the region. That might affect us as well. And the sheer cost of any action in the region, if states like the United Arab Emirates were hit in revenge by Iran, then you have a major cost to all the economies throughout the region, which would have a knock-on effect. Someone once calculated on day one of a major conflagration in the Middle East, it would cost Dubai $1 trillion. But so that shows, even if whether or not the figure is accurate, it shows a concern in the region about the costs of an escalation in this. There would be costs to the United Kingdom. Okay. That's why, despite all evidence to the contrary that diplomacy isn't working, somebody somewhere has got to keep trying to try and find an end to this, because there won't be a military solution to this. There's only a political solution. Most states know that, but when the parties are involved and making decisions which they feel are fundamental to their existence, then sometimes the longer view is lost. That's what other states have to do.
Alistair, thank you for your take on that. Really appreciate your thoughts. Alistair Byrd is a former Middle East minister. Thank you very much indeed for what you're saying today. We go to Eamonn Levy, and Eamonn is a former Israeli government spokesperson. Eamonn, I know there's so much to talk about in relation to this conflict and what's going on, but what did you make of what Alistair Byrd was saying there in terms of economic costs, not only to the region, but to the world?
As well, of allowing Iranian aggression to go unchecked. I don't know whether your viewers understand. The Houthi pirates, who are backed, funded, and trained by Iran, now control access to the Red Sea. They have completely blockaded Israel's port of Eilat, massively restricted ships going through the Suez Canal, and that is sending commodity prices soaring. Yemen is now controlled by an Iranian-backed terrorist regime called the Houthis, against whom the UK has also conducted targeted strikes, and they're causing commodity prices around the world to go up. We're dealing now with the consequences of Iranian aggression going unchecked, and it's that Iranian aggression that needs to be put back in a box.
Alistair Byrd was saying there that pretty much most people agree that there will not be a military solution to this crisis. Do you take that view?
Well, look, the last Lebanon war ended in 2006 with a diplomatic resolution. It was called UN Security Council Resolution 1701. It ordered Hezbollah to disarm and back off away from the Israeli border. That was a political solution. It was never enforced, ever, over the last 18 years. As a result, southern Lebanon is now controlled by an Iranian-backed proxy army that has fired over 9,000 rockets into Israel, displaced over 60,000 Israelis. They've been homeless for the last year because the Hezbollah decided to flout a UN resolution and has been shooting rockets at Israel. And so Israel finds itself in a position now in the north saying, we've been warning Hezbollah for a year, back off or we will have to push you away. You didn't back off and now we have to push you away. But obviously we want a diplomatic resolution, right? We do not want a war.
But Eamonn, who was in charge of implementing that diplomatic resolution? In other words, was there an outside force, UN, whatever?
The UN.
Yeah.
The UN, UNIFIL, UN peacekeepers on the ground who did absolutely nothing. You can look at their Twitter. They haven't mentioned the word Hezbollah once in all the years they have had a Twitter account.
But
we want to have a diplomatic resolution, right?
Yes,
we don't want to war.
Yes, but my question remains, if I may. You know, this may be true. They flouted that 2006 resolution from the United Nations. But by sending in these walkie-talkie explosive devices that were indiscriminate, sending in these pages, by taking a different, I suppose, risk approach to the conflict in the area, because you've moved your attention away from Gaza to the north of Israel, do you think that that is going to resolve that issue that hasn't been, as you say, upheld by the United Nations? Or do you think it's going to just exacerbate it?
Now, hang on. First of all, you called that pager attack indiscriminate. That was, without a doubt, not only the most precise attack in military history, but the most precise attack in military future. If that was really Israel, it made thousands of military communications devices supplied by a terrorist organization exclusively to its terror operatives explode in 99% of cases when they were held up against the terrorists' faces. This is proper James Bond stuff. It is the opposite of indiscriminate. It is far into science fiction levels of precision. Now look, what is happening in the north is this. Israel has been under attack now for a year by the Iranian regime and its proxy armies on 7 fronts. We are fighting for our lives on 7 fronts. This war started when Hamas launched the barbaric October 7th massacre. The following day, their allies, Hezbollah, Iran's proxy army in Lebanon, joined in the fight. The Houthis joined in the fight as well. We've had drones and rocket attacks from Syria, from Iraq, attempted suicide bombings from the West Bank, direct ballistic missile attacks from Iran. On any given day in Israel, we have rockets coming in from 4 or 5 different directions from Iranian proxy armies.
And of course,
and what Israel is trying to do is to make that stop and to make sure that Iran's proxy armies cannot restart those attacks on Israel civilians whenever they choose that the time is right.
And I hear you, and I accept that, of course, Israel must be able to defend itself. My question, I suppose, would be to Iran, you know, what is your end game? Are you trying to weaken Israel in this, which clearly isn't working? And I suppose, my question to you, and it follows on from my previous question, is sort of echoing the words of the foreign minister in Jordan, who is no fan of Hezbollah, Iran, or indeed Hamas, who said, please, world media, ask Israel, what is your end game? Because their actions, your actions at the moment, are not going to do anything to resolve this, but possibly make it worse. What would you say to him?
Iran's endgame is the destruction of the state of Israel, the obliteration of Israel, the annihilation of Israel. Its leaders are very clear about that. There is literally a landmark in Tehran of a doomsday clock that counts down to the day. Our endgame is peace and security for our people. And that's going to require our enemies abandoning the forever war that they are waging to try to destroy the state of Israel. Israel's strategic predicament is that, by the way, as Foreign Secretary Lamy said a while ago, Israel is surrounded by enemies that seek its annihilation. We want to live, they want us to die. I'm not sure what the compromise is somewhere in the middle over there. We've been under attack on 7 fronts now by Iranian proxy armies for a year. And we are trying to stop those rocket attacks, to get back the hostages who are still in Gaza, and to make sure that our people can go safely back to their homes. Look, 7 fronts, so let's zone in on 1. There are 60,000 Israelis now who have been displaced. They've been living in hotels for the last year. They can't go home in the north because Hezbollah is bombing their homes. All we want is for those people to go safely back to their homes without rocket attacks and without the threat of another October 7th from Lebanon. Yesterday, swallowed in the news cycle, the IDF revealed Hezbollah's plans to invade from Lebanon and launch another October 7th massacre. All we want is to foreclose that possibility.
We've got to leave it there. Thank you very much for explaining things in such a detailed way and outlining the whole for and against situation there. We thank you and say goodbye to you there. I've been lucky enough to spend an awful lot of time in Israel. over the years. Matter of fact, I was in hospital in Israel.
Were you?
Once.
Fantastic hospitals. People travel all over the world to use them, don't they?
I'd prefer not to use one again, but it was...
If you have to use one, they're good ones.
It was in Tel Aviv. And just a fascinating country. It's a country the size of Wales. Basically, but look at the responsibilities and the problems all around it, and it must be, you know, for the people who do live there and have chosen that as their home. Wow, that is a pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, terrifying situation, and of course, you know, terrifying in the region more widely as well. We take a break now. We take a look at the forecast. We take a break from that subject anyway, and we look at what the weather's got in store for you today with Alex Deakin.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having a bit of a drab start today, but it should get a little brighter as the day goes on. Many of us will be dry as well, but there's still a keen and cold, gusty wind blowing along the east coast of England, and quite a lot of cloud across England and Wales this morning. Some outbreaks of rain here and there. We'll continue with some showers across East Anglia and the southeast, particularly for Essex and Suffolk and Kent. They'll be on and off through the day. Elsewhere, though, many places dry. Should brighten up a little bit over Wales, northern England, and sunny spells for most of the day across Scotland and Northern Ireland. On the chilly side, particularly with that wind coming in from the North Sea, quite gusty conditions at times for Wales and southwest England also, and throughout the day we will continue to see these showers just drifting in across East Anglia, maybe some getting into the home counties, certainly across Kent, a few heavy showers keeping going. But further north and west, we'll see that cloud breaking up over Wales and northern England, and by and large a fine day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's a bit chilly first thing, and temperatures struggling a little bit, even with some sunshine through the afternoon, and quite quickly this evening those temperatures will be falling away once more because the winds are pretty light here, and the winds, that noticeable and cold breeze along the east coast, will also tend to ease through the night. Still a few showers getting into parts of Kent, East Anglia, maybe some returning to Lincolnshire as well, but away from eastern England, a dry night, a clear night, and those temperatures really dipping down, well down into single figures, even in towns and cities. So rural spots are likely to see some pockets of frost over northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Could be a little bit of mist here and there early doors, but that should disappear fairly sharply. And for many, it's a good-looking day tomorrow. Still a bit more cloud and one or two showers for Kent. The odd shower is possible elsewhere over the Midlands and northern England, but most places dry and bright tomorrow. Bit more in the way of sunshine. Those winds a little bit lighter, so feeling a touch warmer with temperatures in the teens.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You still have plenty of time to get involved in the autumn cash boost. That cash boost is a big boost. It is boosting to
£36,000. That's £3,000 tax-free in your bank account every month for a whole year.
And it could be yours.
There's still plenty, and good luck.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody
in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Welcome back to you as well. Welcome back to you, whatever you're doing today. It's been a busy night overnight, news-wise, and the politics goes on in Birmingham today because it's time for new Tories as opposed to new Labour, similar to new Labour.
Yep, Labour are selfish, greedy socialists, apparently. Wealth is not a dirty word, and conservatism with a smile. These are all messages that the four Conservative leadership candidates will today deliver in speeches at their party's conference.
Well, that's as Kemi Badenoch faces more criticism for suggesting 1 in 10 civil servants are so bad at their jobs they should be, wait for it, jailed.
Well, meanwhile, Robert Jenrick and James Cleverly take aim at Reform UK and Nigel Farage, claiming they want to make the party redundant.
Sir Keir Starmer will meet with the European Commission President today to reset the UK's relationship with Brussels, whatever that means. Joining us now, former advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Redrup. Good to see you, Oscar.
Morning, guys.
Morning.
What about this rebalance button that Keir Starmer is seeking and looking to press?
Well, look, I mean, I think it's quite interesting when you see the events of overnight and the actual the scale of foreign issues at the moment. And when you're here at conference, that kind of lack of cut through, even domestically, and then something like the situation in the Middle East escalates, and you realise it even more. I have to say it's quite interesting. I haven't heard anything from the Foreign Secretary or if he's out and about. And it will be really interesting today to see how defence and security and the future of our country and our place in the world cuts through. I think Tom Tugendhat spoke very well on this stuff yesterday. That's a real strength of his, and it'll be interesting to see how other leadership candidates do in what is the last day of conference here.
Having a good conference, who's having a bad conference? Because there have been a few gaffes, haven't there? Jenrick getting himself, some people would say, in hot water, talking about potential extrajudicial killings by SAS soldiers, which was heavily criticised by Cleverly and Tugendhat. You've also got Kemi Badenoch with her controversial comments, whether you believe them or not, to have been misrepresented on maternity pay, and most recently on civil servants, which apparently she was joking, being sent to prison. I can't think of anything that's got too many bad headlines from Cleverly or Tugendhat. Have I missed anything?
No, I think that's a really accurate reflection. It's really interesting because in terms of those two front runners of Jenrick and Kemi heading into this conference week, you know, it has felt at times perhaps they've slightly overstretched, whilst Cleverly and Tugendhat have run these really kind of nice guy campaigns. And I have to say it was really interesting being around here yesterday. Cleverly's speech did feel like a bit of a moment here at conference, and I think there were a lot of undecided people that watched him speak and thought, I came here completely open-minded, no idea who I was going to back, and actually your speech is kind of, I'm now in your camp, I think I'm going to vote for you. The infighting, if you like, for want of a better word, and the whole yellow card threat, if there's too much briefing against each other, I think is just about being adhered to. You reference Kemi's lines and controversies, if you like. I do sometimes wonder, I think there's a strategic element to that, because there does need to be an element of cut-through for any of the candidates if they want to lead the party. I think there's been a weird adjustment here. I think people kind of weirdly think, oh, we're still in government. We're in opposition now, and it needs a candidate who has charisma, a bit of X factor, and sometimes actually that cut through. And, as Eamonn hinted at, the issues of the day in terms of Starmer, David Lammy, the Labour government, the Middle East, these huge geopolitical issues. It's going to take someone with something quite special to cut through for the Tories.
And who is that someone quite special as regards you?
I'm going to call it, I think you like Cleverly.
Cleverly's had a really, really good conference. I think Eamonn, and I don't want to second-guess you, Eamonn, but I think there are weaknesses, shall we say, in all four of the candidates. So sometimes it's hard to get overly excited, but they do also have their strengths, and someone like even Tom Tugendhat yesterday, who was talking about the people he served with, particularly with all the context of everything that's going on right now. And there was like a real emotional, serious depth to hearing him speak about that. And then that kind of swayed me over here. And then, Rob's ability, I think, to probably slightly kneecap reform is quite compelling. And Kemi, I think, to answer your question, the best 10% of Kemi is something quite special. But I've heard a few people, and this is not quoting me at all, or my views, but you hear quite a few people saying it often ends in tears with Kemi. And so, that remains to be seen. But Eamonn's going to really hate me now, but there haven't been the cues of Boris Johnson here. They just haven't. There is not a candidate who can bring that home.
There's a different type of candidate, and we were talking about Cleverly there, and we must say, look, we've interviewed them all. I totally agree with what you say, is that you think, oh, he or she, very, very good, and then the next candidate comes along and you think, oh, yes, that's very good too, and it's quite hard to decide. But overall, as a package, Cleverly is hard to beat, we were saying.
The reason I thought that you were saying and leaning towards Cleverly was because I know that he sort of did a wink yesterday and said, maybe I'll be able to get Boris to do us a few favours. He's kept good relations with him, and of course he's the electoral golden goose, isn't he? And of course he'd get a hero's reception at conference. He had that celebrity charisma, which has been lacking. A few people saying it's been a bit of a dull conference. If Cleverly can get favours, perhaps, to get votes, that could also work in the threat against reform.
Absolutely, and I was speaking to people who are far cleverer, smarter, better informed, more plugged in than me, and one of them made such a good point about Cleverly, which is that and it's a quite hard thing to accept in some ways, but the Conservative brand, there are a lot of people who see a Conservative politician and feel a bit repulsed. And James Cleverly is the best person to go out there and actually kind of push against that. People go, he seems like a nice guy, I'd go for a drink with him. He doesn't actually repulse me, and I admit that bar is incredibly low for the Conservative Party at the moment. But there's something to be said for that. A nice guy who can actually get on with people. A lot of the videos he's been doing have been outside the conference centre.
Yeah, he's very
actually meeting members of the public, because sometimes.
And we
forget that we need that support
as well as members. If you were standing, I'd vote for you. Thank you very much indeed, my friend. We've got to leave things there. Thanks for waking us up today as to what's going on there. Last day in Birmingham.
Yeah,
Thank you, Oscar.
Try and liven it up. Thanks, Oscar. Right, stay with us.
You didn't mean Oscar liven up. You meant
yeah,
it. Conference.
Yeah, or did
just
you take an offence
I think he might.
Oh no, he was great. I was just saying, go and do something to make it a bit more interesting.
Best politician I've ever seen. I've ever seen. John F. Kennedy, JFK.
Wow.
Margaret Thatcher.
Did you see them both in the flesh?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I didn't see Kennedy in the flesh.
Oh.
No, his
Sorry.
flesh
No, I
was
thought
all
you
over the
meant
road in Dallas, so it was.
Oh, right.
But the first political situation I remember the assassination of Kennedy,
Right.
and I can remember my mother and my cousins standing around TV crying.
Yeah, because of course the Irish loved him.
Sitting,
didn't they?
well, we had a picture of him on our wall.
Of course, he was a heartthrob,
Yeah.
no less.
Well, no, he was a religious icon. I mean, he was the first Catholic.
Such a pious man.
Huh?
He was such a pious man.
No, this is
I
the
know
irony
what
of the
you mean.
image.
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but, you know, the picture of him and his wife, Jacqueline,
Oh,
up
yeah.
there, and he was the first Irish Catholic American president there was. So he was very, very impressive. Margaret Thatcher was very, very impressive. Tony Blair, I think, at his best is impressive.
Well, many people say that Nigel Farage is one of the most impactful
I think
politicians
you may
of
be
our
right
time.
there.
He'll be on our very
Good,
programme.
I haven't finished.
Oh.
Then who else was I going to talk about there? You
Sorry,
made me
Blair,
forget.
you said?
Gordon Brown is a very sincere man.
Yeah,
very well, but nothing. I mean, I've spent a lot of time with Gordon Brown, and I think he's very, very impressive, whatever.
Conviction enough.
But I think Hillary Clinton is very, very impressive, having met her a number of times. But most of all, the guy who's just gold dust is Bill Clinton.
Yes.
Absolute star status, gold. If you walk into a room and he's there, you know he is there. He's a star politically. I don't care what way you vote or whatever it is, what you
He's
think.
got charisma in spades.
He has got
and
it
intellect.
in spades, in absolute spades. That's the way he's got
Oh,
that.
well, let us know what
Paul
you think.
Coyte's got none of those things, but he has got the sport after this.
You're so mean.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Antrim, the A26 is closed near Clock after an accident. The M65 in Lancashire is closed each way between junctions 8 and 10 between Accrington and Burnley after an accident. On the M621 in West Yorkshire, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed westbound between junctions 7 and 6 south of Leeds, where overnight roadworks have overrun. There are queues from the M1. On the M1 in Derbyshire, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed northbound for an investigation near the Tibshelf services between junctions 28 and 29 near Mansfield, taking 20 minutes in queues towards there. On the M25 in Hertfordshire, the inside lanes closed anti-clockwise where someone's broken down just before junction 25 for the A10, with queues from junction 27 for the M11. And on the M25 in Surrey, 2 lanes are closed anti-clockwise at junction 13 at Staines after an accident, with queues from junction 15 for the M4. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We were talking about impressive politicians who you've met before, whatever it is, and I forgot I left one off the list.
Oh, yeah.
Grant Shapps.
Of course.
But then the problem with that is, as we say good morning to him, the problem is that he is the former Secretary of State for Defence. And the first thing, Grant, I want to know is, what are you doing now? What is your role, or how do you see yourself going forward?
Morning. Well, the first thing I'm doing now is sort of decompressing a bit and having a bit of a break. I was actually able to go away with my family on holiday without being called back to London for one reason or another, and just having a bit of a break from it all. But I'm here at a conference. I thought it was an important conference after such a big defeat, to make sure that we can start that rebuild. And of course, there's the leadership election going on right now, and I've launched something called Conservatives Together at this conference, which is really the combined experiences of all the candidates who had provided their feedback and returned that into a report. So still busy on the politics stuff, but really sort of quite enjoying a bit of life on the outside, a little bit more freedom as well.
Well, I want to talk to you about conference a bit more in a moment, but I feel with your former Defence Secretary hat on, we have to reflect on the significant changes in the Middle East over the last 24 hours. First of all, we saw this ground incursion by Israel into Lebanon, and we've seen British involvement now in helping to defend Israel as it's endured a barrage of ballistic missiles overnight. The Prime Minister coming out full square in support of our ally, and I just wanted to get your thoughts this morning on those developments.
Well, look, first of all, I strongly welcome the Prime Minister's stance on this. I was a bit concerned, given prior to yesterday, the government had been sort of tacking away from its support, I thought, for Israel. And in the end, they're the only democracy in the region, and they're under attack from all sides. But actually, all roads lead to Tehran. So, you know, whether they're under attack from Hamas or Hezbollah in Lebanon, or the Houthis in Yemen, or indeed Iran itself, it's always Iran that's behind it. And, you know, yesterday we saw Iran launch those attacks. And I'm very pleased, actually, to see that the British RAF were involved in defending the only democracy in the Middle East. So, you know, I'll say it as it is. I think the Prime Minister has done the right thing. I was calling for that last night, and I'm relieved to see that's what's happened.
Where do you see this going? Do you expect now to see a tit-for-tat action? Some experts predicting that Israel may go after Iran's nuclear infrastructure. We heard just weeks ago that Putin had just shared nuclear intelligence with the regime, which is, of course, hugely concerning. Do you see this escalating even further, not just a sort of regional war, but with our involvement as well? Or do you think there are still some back channels open and any hope of a swift diplomatic resolution?
Well, look, of course, I really want to see peace in the Middle East. I spend a lot of time out there as Defence Secretary, meeting a lot of different leaders there. And, of course, you don't want it to escalate. I think, though, also the world probably has to address the fact that Iran is stirring up these proxies in every single direction, and everyone is fed up with Iran creating this instability in the region, including the moderate Arab states. So countries like Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates or Jordan or Egypt are equally as fed up with Iran creating these problems. And probably we do need to actually address that elephant in the room, Iran with nuclear weapons. And if aided and abetted by Putin, by another dictator, then that is really very concerning, and perhaps we can't afford to continue to ignore that any longer.
Well, in the studio here, Grant, we have Emma Wolfe, and we've got Fraser Myers, who are reviewing the papers for us this morning. And it's a big day because the candidates for leadership, they're all going to make a pitch to conference today. And before we say goodbye to you, I want to hear from Emma and Fraser as to what they think the Conservatives should be looking for in a new leader. And then I'm going to ask you. Right, Emma.
Well, it's hardly been a kind of festival of love and togetherness. Isn't this the time at which the candidates need to stop all the infighting and the backstabbing and all the kind of, you know, tit for tat, and actually show how they're going to bring the party back together? Because the Conservatives have been driven with division for years now, and it's just such a bad look.
Fraser?
I think they need someone who recognises the scale of public rejection that they faced. You listen to some of the comments from the conference and you feel like they, you know, just because Keir Starmer's having a few wobbles, they think they're going to get in next term quite easily. They've got a lot of work to do, I think.
Yeah, so what do you make of that then, Grant Shapps?
Yeah, no, I agree with both of your commentators there, actually, but spot on. With the small exception that I'd say if you're in a leadership contest, then of course you're going to have differences brought to the surface. That's the whole point of having a debate, and every time that someone has a slight difference with someone else, I don't think that needs to be turned into squabbling or calling it squabbling. That is in fact the point of having a debate and a democracy. By the way, exactly the sort of thing that people like President Putin don't want the world to have, which is free and open, right to have a bit of debate about these things. But I do agree about the need to then come back together, and that's why I'm supporting James Cleverly. I think he's the person who's most likely to be able to get that job done. I think he's the unifier in all of this.
Okay, really quickly, who are you backing, and might we see you returning to party politics shortly?
Yeah, I'm backing James Cleverly. I'm actually his chairman of his campaign. I think he's the person, as I say, will unify the party. I'm rather enjoying myself with a bit more freedom, a little bit more time for family and other things, but I haven't lost the itch for politics. I like public service, and
That's a yes, then.
May come back in the future.
OK, have to leave it there. I didn't hear you say you were backing Cleverly because they were telling me to wrap, so we have to say goodbye to Mr Shapps. Thanks for your time, and we'll be back in just a moment.
You listen.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Some controversial film news. Someone has hired an actor who's white. What the hell is going on?
Let me just fix my hair. Let me just come on. So, Wuthering Heights film stirs controversy after white actor, he's white, chosen to play Heathcliff.
Is that your Humza Yusuf impersonator?
That is, but yes, that's my Chinese accent. Experts have gone, oh no, there's a lot of, in recent years, he's definitely black or mixed race because he was found in Liverpool. And as you know, everybody in Liverpool is black or mixed race.
No, I mean, have you read the novel?
God, no.
Right, well, I have. And the novel itself does say, quite explicitly, that he is dark-skinned. Yeah. That the implication is that he's of Romani origin. So he wouldn't be whiter than white, So, I mean...
No, that's fine. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that casting... But on the other hand...
This guy's Spanish. His origin's Spanish.
You remember when there was a black Anne Boleyn for a Channel 5 miniseries? That seems to be more egregious, because, I tell you what, Anne Boleyn definitely wasn't black.
You racist. No, I almost feel sorry of this story because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't now. Because if they'd have, it's not like he's a bit of an anti-hero, right? It's not like a good all-round.
He's not a good guy.
So if you go, right, we definitely need to cast someone black for this. What? Why are you picking just black people to play someone with so many character flaws? Or you go, why?
Like they did with Darth Vader.
Yes, that's right.
He was played by the Green Cross Code Man. Okay. Just the voice was done by...
That's true. Yeah. Yes, it was the Green Cross Code Man. I wonder what they were saying there.
Have you ever seen the videos of the original audio of Star Wars?
No.
So you've got... I can't remember his name, but you've got the Green Cross Code Man going like, I find your lack of faith disturbing. Yeah. No, Luke, I am your father.
They should have left it as it was.
This is the difference between me. We're talking about Star Wars. You're like, oh, have you read Bronte, Wuthering, whatever?
She only wrote one novel, Josh. You could... do with the courtesy of reading it.
I'll read it straight after I finish your one.
And it's actually brilliant.
The People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got Emma and Fraser, and they're reviewing stories that are making the news today. And one for both of you to talk about in the few minutes that we've got left is Keir Starmer wanting to regenerate links with Europe.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having closer relations with Europe necessarily, but what worries me is his language. He's talking about being in lockstep with Brussels. Britain is stronger when in lockstep with Brussels. It's very strange because only a month ago, even the top bureaucrats in Brussels were saying that we're in deep economic trouble. Mario Draghi, the former head of the ECB, was saying that unless Brussels radically changes, they're going to be living in slow economic agony for decades.
Well, I don't think he's talking about financial lockstep. I don't think he's talking about the Eurozone. I think he's talking about trying to work out a more efficient trade relationship with our closest neighbours, for example.
But if that involves essentially mirroring the regulations from Brussels, then, we're going back to where we were before Brexit. Then we're sort of stuck in the same kind of death spiral that much of the EU is in. Let's not forget, this is the slowest growing continent on Earth. It is growing at half the rate of the United States. We need to be doing something different. We need new ideas, not going back to Brussels.
Well, we all know that Starmer famously prefers Davos to Westminster, doesn't he? So, and I think this is him. He's very, very keen to focus on things not happening on his own patch. There's been a lot of questions and a lot of call for him to appear and to talk, and he's been pretty invisible over the past few days. And suddenly to pop up with this, I don't think this is what people are talking about in the country when it comes to our Prime Minister.
Is he not just simply, I'll play devil's advocate here, could he be approaching Europe and saying, hey, we used to be, we had our differences, but, there were things that worked well between us, and let's get all the things that worked well together without any of the big, tough, hard penalties involved.
But we have just had a vote on Brexit, although not just, but it feels fairly recent, and this is going to be seen by many as a betrayal, as an overturning, gradually, even by stealth, even by bits and bobs, the thin end of the wedge.
Pains, I think, not to be seen to be betrayed.
And he said that
vote because, of course, he doesn't want to open up old wounds, and he's absolutely saying.
But when you pick away,
but he's not doing that.
He's not doing that, and when you start to unravel what people voted for, when you start to pick away and say, OK, well, maybe we'll bring back freedom of movement, well, maybe we'll bring back the youth
movement.
Well, yeah, but
there's
things
pressure
like
on him,
things like the youth mobility scheme, which he has been discussing. We know he's been discussing that with Spain quite recently. He had his summit at Chequers, didn't he?
What would be the problem?
No, I don't have a problem with those specific things. I think freedom of movement. I think there are some things that why have we shot ourselves in the foot? I think freedom of movement not to stand in a queue, in a passport queue,
right, so is that
for hours and hours.
Suggesting?
Yeah, but is that possible? Can you just pick and choose the best bits?
Well,
I think
it's worth exploring, Fraser. But then you look at little French man, what's his name?
Macron.
And he wanted to have a fisticuff situation with Boris over what was going on with Britain pulling out of Europe there. So they have scores to settle too. A lot of people don't forget.
Yeah, that's right. It was a rejection of them and their way of doing things. They took it very personally, and understandably so. It was a vote against Brussels. There are some specifics that Keir Starmer wants, and you can't necessarily object to those. So he wants a deal on food to make it easier to sell food in and out of the EU. That's fine, but the question is, what will Brussels want in return? And one thing that even Brussels is saying is actually, Keir Starmer is not very specific. He has some specifics, but he just talks about a reset. That sort of worries me because, you need to know what you want. You need to know what you're prepared to give in response. But Starmer, generally being a Remainer, just thinks anything coming from Brussels is good.
But Europe has changed. Is almost unrecognisable from 2015. We've seen a huge rise in parties of the right across the continent. We've seen this huge immigration crisis. Countries like Germany wanting to close their borders and questioning Schengen and all the rest of it. So it is right to reset that relationship because the bloc has changed.
It has, but does he have a mandate to do that? And my worry is to start unpicking things. As Fraser says, what will they want in return? We know they're not keen on letting people leave or to start to choose and, pick and choose. So
Well, I suppose that's maybe what people voted for then. Do you still think the same now? Back after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Antrim, the A26 is closed each way near Clock after an accident on Monday night. The M65 in Lancashire is closed each way between junctions 8 and 10 between Accrington and Burnley after an accident with long delays as you divert. On the M621 in West Yorkshire, with 2 out of 3 lanes closed westbound where overnight roadworks have overrun between junctions 7 and 6 south of Leeds, with queues from the M1. On the M1 in Derbyshire, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed northbound for an investigation near the Chib Shelf services between junctions 28 and 29 near Mansfield, taking 20 minutes in queues towards there. Again, delays on the A38 as you divert. Now on the M25 in Surrey, 2 out of 5 lanes are closed anti-clockwise at junction 13 at Staines after an accident, with queues from junction 17 at Maple Cross. And in London, the North Circular is closed eastbound off the Cooks Ferry interchange at Chingford after an accident, causing long delays.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, good morning. We're looking back at 24 hours that has put the Middle East on the brink.
The Defence Secretary confirms British forces helped shoot down Iranian missiles heading towards Israel in a bid to curb the escalating tensions in the region.
This comes after Tehran fired a wave of at least 200 rockets, including dozens of ballistic missiles at Israeli cities.
Sir Keir Starmer addressed the nation following the attack.
Make no mistake, Britain stands full square against such violence. We support Israel's reasonable demand for the security of its people.
We go to Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, for his take on this. Mark.
Well, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Iran made a big mistake in launching those ballistic missiles, and he has promised there will be a response.
Tory leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch slams civil servants, suggesting 10% of them should be locked up.
Your view's very welcome. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick, James Cleverly have hit out at Reform UK. They dubbed the party a pale imitation of the Tories. We'll be find out when Nigel Farage comes into studio, and we'll hear his response to that live 8:20.
The Prime Minister is set to travel to Brussels in a bid to improve relations with the EU. He aims to deliver a broad-based security pact, secure borders and to tackle trade barriers.
And in the Sport Champions League last night, Arsenal beat Paris Saint-Germain 2-0. Manchester City scored 4 against Slovan Bratislava, who are just happy to be there. Less happy, Celtic shipped 7 goals in Dortmund, and it's Liverpool and Aston Villa's turn tonight.
Cold wind blowing today and a bit of a drab start, but generally getting a little bit brighter with some sunny spells coming through and drier and finer weather on the way for most of us through Thursday as well. Join me later for a full forecast.
1 minute, 2 minutes now exactly past 8 o'clock. Good morning to you. You're very welcome. GB News, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
Thanks for your company. I'm Isabel Webster and you're tuned in to GB News Breakfast.
So, Mr. Coit, there's a lot going on last night. There's a lot in the news front, which is filling up our agenda today. But a busy night in sport, it has to be said. Not all of it good.
Well, not if you're a Celtic fan. No. It's not good. 7 goals that they shipped yesterday. Arsenal look very good. They're playing at home to Paris Saint-Germain, who are not what they used to be, it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Aston Villa playing Bayern Munich tonight, so Harry Kane could be back, although the German newspaper Bild has had the audacity to even think about having a go at Harry Kane.
I'm offended for you.
You know what?
I know you take this very
I'm just
personally.
beginning to shake. How dare they? He breaks every record in Germany, and
Harry.
still it's not good enough for them.
Oh, and I'd just like to congratulate Ali McCoist today, former Rangers manager.
Yep, we love Ali, don't we?
Star striker, and he gets himself an OBE today.
Good for Ali.
Yeah.
Top man. Yep.
Thank you.
Right, to the developing picture coming overnight from the Middle East, and both the UK and the United States have confirmed that they were involved in operations to shoot down over 180 Iranian missiles fired at Israel.
The Defence Minister, John Healey, he said that British forces played their part in attempts to prevent further escalation.
Well, Keir Starmer addressed the nation last night and had this to say.
The Iranian regime has launched over 200 ballistic missiles at civilian targets in Israel. It's too soon to assess the impact fully, but I utterly condemn this attempt by the Iranian regime to harm innocent Israelis, to escalate this incredibly dangerous situation and push the region ever closer to the brink. It cannot be tolerated. We stand with Israel and we recognise her right to self-defence in the face of this aggression. Iran must stop these attacks, together with its proxies like Hezbollah. Iran has menaced the Middle East for far too long. Chaos and destruction brought not just to Israel, but to the people they live amongst in Lebanon and beyond. Make no mistake, Britain stands full square against such violence. We support Israel's reasonable demand for the security of its people. I am deeply concerned that the region is on the brink, and I'm deeply concerned about the risk of miscalculation.
After making that statement late last night, we go back to Mark White and just get... So we're standing beside Israel, the world very much against what Iran is doing so far. Where do you think this leaves Iran?
Well, it's a really difficult and dangerous situation that we're in at the moment, because the Iranian regime is saying very publicly that they will take more aggressive measures against Israel if Israel responds to these ballistic missile strikes last night. And it was, as we watched the images last night of these missiles coming in, many of them impacting on the ground, very concerning for an hour or more until we got the all clear from the Israeli military there. And thankfully, in terms of the Israeli population, no significant injuries or deaths. There was a report that in the West Bank, a Palestinian was killed from one of these missiles, or debris from a missile impacting the ground near him. So it's over to Israel, really. Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Iran has made a big mistake and that there will be a response, and we are told through security sources that it could well be a significant response of a magnitude greater than the response we saw back in April, when you remember that a barrage of missiles and drones came across from Iran on that occasion in retaliation for the death of two generals at an embassy in Damascus, the Syrian capital, which Iran blamed on Israel. Israel responded, but really on that occasion, it took out a radar station. It was the kind of response that Iran clearly felt it could live with, and despite sort of bellicose language from Iran before Israel's response, it didn't in the end respond. So the hope will be that, you know, a similar situation unfolds this time, that Israel does respond and it's limited enough in its scope so that Iran doesn't feel the need to retaliate again, because there, as I say, we are in a very difficult and dangerous spiral towards ever greater escalation.
OK, Mark, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's bring in the former British Army Colonel and chemical and biological warfare expert, Hamish de Bretton-Gordon. Very good morning to you. It was interesting in that statement from the Prime Minister last night that he was very worried about any sort of miscalculation in this high-stakes situation that we see ourselves in, obviously in relation to perhaps the loss of life of Israeli civilians from these missiles coming in from Iran. But my question to you is about any possible retaliation from Israel to nuclear infrastructure in Iran, because we understand President Putin has recently been sharing his coveted nuclear secrets with the regime. You know, how dangerous would it be if they were to go after that infrastructure?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, pretty dangerous, but I think Iran has been utterly humiliated. Its forward defence, its proxies, as you've described, Hezbollah and Hamas have been pretty much written down by the Israelis. It's now fired over 500 missiles at Israel, including the missiles you mentioned in April this year, and virtually none have got through and haven't been damaged. And the last time the Israelis fired one missile at Iran's nuclear facility in April, it got through. So I think Iran's in a difficult position. It's made some strategic errors. It gave a whole lot of ballistic missiles to the Russians a few weeks ago, possibly in return, as you suggest, for nuclear technology. But I think Iran absolutely knows that probably nuclear is the key to this. And Israel has nuclear weapons and Iran doesn't. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if the Israeli response is to take down those research labs and sites around Isfahan, which it hit last time. And Iran, without a nuclear potential, is in a very weak place. It has few allies, and the Americans and ourselves have demonstrated our resolve. So I think another strategic error by the Ayatollahs in Iran, and I don't really see they've thrown the kitchen sink at Israel, and it's sort of disappeared over the skies of the Middle East. So I think the Ayatollahs will have a lot to think about today in Tehran.
So by that analysis, then, you don't necessarily anticipate a tit-for-tat response. You think that perhaps this was a flexing of the muscles from Iran, but they may just continue to use their proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, rather than directly strike Israel again?
Well, absolutely. I think they've invested so much time, effort and resources in their terror groups that you mentioned that actually their own conventional defence they haven't focused on it. And it's all very old type of equipment that they've got there, which is why in the past they haven't been their air defence hasn't been up to taking Israeli missiles down, and the ballistic missiles that they fired at Israel, are fairly old-fashioned, which is why they've been taken down so easily. So I think Iran is full of a lot of demonstrative verbiage, as it were, but its military capability, as we've seen, and as Israel said, and I would back up, Israel's military capability is far superior, despite the fact Israel is a tiny country compared to Iran. So, yeah, I expect Israel to respond in some manner, and I expect it to be surgical. But I don't, the Iranians are running out of options to escalate, and they don't have that ultimate escalation, a nuclear weapon that they can use.
About the ground incursion into Lebanon, do you see this being resolved quickly? Israel saying that they want their residents to be able to return to the north of Israel, but it feels a long way from peace in that area.
Well, I think militarily, what the Israelis are doing on their northern border is the right thing to do. It appears to me that they're putting in special forces and small groups to go and clear the border. So that there is a buffer zone, if you like, between Lebanon and Israel. That probably will take a bit of time, I would have thought, possibly a few weeks. But Hezbollah has been, the head has been taken off its snake, and they are not the organisation they were 2 weeks ago. So, I think Israel has demonstrated how to deal with terror groups. Admittedly, they've had pretty wide rules of engagement, and it's an existential fight for Israel. So you're not surprised. People shouldn't be surprised at what the Israelis are doing. They are fighting for their very survival, and actually they're probably showing the world this is probably the way to do it. And I think it's very important that the US in particular and ourselves keep supporting them, because that, I think, is the way to prevent further escalation in the Middle East. We don't hear a lot of the other Middle East countries coming to the support of Iran. They are certainly all sitting back, and that's really how it should be. Iran must realise that it is banging against a door that it just can't open. And let's hope they'll realise that sooner rather than later.
Hamish, got to leave it there. Thanks for your take. Appreciate it. And now to the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham again. GB News political editor Christopher Hope has caught up with former Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries.
I think both James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat are three individuals who all behaved with integrity during the last government. They didn't try to undermine any Prime Minister they served under. They always acted with professionalism. And I think any one of those three candidates has already proved themselves to be the kind of person who would put the party first before self-interest. And so, you know, I'd be happy with any one of those.
You're going to update your book with a plot coming out called Downfall in November. What's it about?
So it's a follow-on from the plot. So much continued to happen, and I was given so much information. I did not want to write this book, but I was in a position where I had so much information, I just had to do it. And some of it I think people perhaps should know before they decide on who the leader is, but I didn't think that was fair to the party, so the book comes out on the 21st of November.
Who's the person least tainted by all the plotting?
No, I've said any one of the three men have acted with integrity. They supported the government, both Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak. None of them were plotters. They all knew that, you know, to remove a Prime Minister that the public had just elected, and I'm talking about Boris Johnson, with an 80-seat majority and a bigger percentage of the vote share than Tony Blair, they knew that beyond there lay madness, and they didn't do that. They did all they could to keep the party together. So any one of those three men will make an excellent...
And Kemi Badenoch would deny she plotted.
Well, Kemi Badenoch did plot. She was one of the... She's still, you know... Look at the people who are supporting Kemi Badenoch today. Who are they? They're the same people who were the plotters against Boris Johnson and who supported Rishi Sunak. I think that if you can't serve a Prime Minister loyally when you're in his cabinet or in his government, then you don't automatically have the right to be elected as a Prime Minister in the future. Loyalty is very important. It's the #1 quality that any candidate should have, as far as I'm concerned.
Nadine Dorries, let's get a reaction to what she had to say there from our political correspondent there, Catherine Foster. Catherine.
Yes, both the front runners, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch, managing to get themselves into a bit of hot water over the last couple of days. I'll come specifically to those shortly. But Nadine Dorries' comments, I think, really very interesting indeed, saying any of the men that they'd all been loyal, but singling out Kemi Badenoch, saying that she plotted to remove Boris Johnson. Now, of course, a lot of Conservative Party members who will ultimately pick the next leader were furious with Rishi Sunak because they felt that he had been instrumental in bringing Boris Johnson down. That was one of the reasons why they went for Liz Truss. And Kemi Badenoch said the other day that the saddest moment of her career had been when she had to resign from her position, you know, when so many people were going and Boris Johnson's government sort of imploded. That is not what the tweets or the WhatsApp messages that were leaked suggested at the time, because those WhatsApp messages between ministers, people in her department, made their way to the press. And in them, she seemed very clearly to be egging on people to resign. To one of them, she said, "Do it, do it, do it." To another one, she said, "Come on, you know you want to." That's rather different from the picture she's painting now. So you have to wonder whether some Conservative MPs or Conservative Party members will remember that. All the leadership contenders will be speaking this morning, 20 minutes each, and then next week the MPs will eliminate 2 of them, and then the members will get the final say.
Catherine, thank you very much indeed. Let's not forget Nigel Farage from Reform UK. He's going to be here very, very shortly. We'll give you a weather update. First of all, here's Alex Deakin.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having a bit of a drab start today, but it should get a little brighter as the day goes on. Many of us will be dry as well, but there's still a keen and cold, gusty wind blowing along the east coast of England, and quite a lot of cloud across England and Wales this morning. Some outbreaks of rain here and there. We'll continue with some showers across East Anglia and the southeast, particularly for Essex and Suffolk and Kent. They'll be on and off through the day. Elsewhere, though, many places dry. Should brighten up a little bit over Wales, northern England, and sunny spells for most of the day across Scotland and Northern Ireland. On the chilly side, particularly with that wind coming in from the North Sea, quite gusty conditions at times for Wales and southwest England also. And throughout the day, we will continue to see these showers just drifting in across East Anglia, maybe some getting into the home counties, certainly across Kent, a few heavy showers keeping going. But further north and west, we'll see that cloud breaking up over Wales and northern England, and by and large a fine day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's a bit chilly first thing, and temperatures struggling a little bit, even with some sunshine through the afternoon, and quite quickly this evening those temperatures will be falling away once more because the winds are pretty light here, and the winds, noticeable and cold breeze along the east coast, will also tend to ease through the night. Still a few showers getting into parts of Kent, East Anglia, maybe some returning to Lincolnshire as well, but away from eastern England, a dry night, a clear night, and those temperatures really dipping down, well down into single figures, even in towns and cities. So rural spots are likely to see some pockets of frost over northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Could be a little bit of mist here and there early doors, but that should disappear fairly sharply. And for many, it's a good-looking day tomorrow. Still a bit more cloud and one or two showers for Kent. The odd shower is possible elsewhere over the Midlands and northern England, but most places dry and bright tomorrow. Bit more in the way of sunshine. Those winds a little bit lighter, so feeling a touch warmer with temperatures in the teens.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed boiler repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Great demand, a lot of interest in the Great British Giveaway, and just remember this, if you're not in, you can't win.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Sleep Report 2024 is based on a comprehensive survey conducted all across the country, and the report found that over half the population, get this, falls short of the recommended 7+ hours of required sleep each night. And shockingly, 1 in 4 of us is getting 5 hours or less, and that includes you, doesn't it?
Yes, I'm very bad at sleep. 4 or 5, I'd say.
That's
awful. A bit like
awful.
Maggie Thatcher. What would you get on average?
I'd say at least 6. 7 probably average.
That's probably not good. I think you probably need 8. Well, almost half of Brits rate their sleep quality as 5 out of 10 or lower.
Dr Manesh Shah and Dr Sita Shah joins us now to tell us all about the sleep and how Brits are struggling. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
First questions to you both. How many hours do you both get?
God, I think it varies. I try and hit that 7 hours of sleep.
Why are Brits so bad at getting sleep, especially in terms of hours? 4 or 5 hours for me, 6 hours for you. It's the same for everybody out there in the UK. We're just not going to bed early enough. Is it as simple as that? Or is it slightly more complicated?
Yeah, so I think the key is to establish a good routine. So waking up at the same time every day, making sure that you're going to sleep at the same time every day, and being quite sort of rigid and strict with yourself when it comes to those timings.
And also, it's not just the length of, I get, say, 7 hours, it's the quality, isn't it? You've got different phases of sleep.
Yeah.
Just explain those. Is it, as far as I remember, REM, deep sleep? Just tell us about that.
Correct, yeah. So, essentially, there's 4 stages to sleep. So there's stage 1 and stage 2, which are your lighter stages of sleep. And then stage 3 is your deeper sleep. And then you've got the stage 4, which is your REM. Which is a rapid eye movement stage. And it's the stage 3 and the REM sleep which is really, really important for restorative and regenerative sleep.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, we're delighted to welcome into studio live this morning Mr Nigel Farage from Reform UK, and he's hit back at Robert Jenrick and James Cleverly from the Conservatives, who've hit at him, they've taken aim at him and his party, Reform UK, claiming they want to make the party redundant. What do you mean? They want to make the party redundant.
They want to make Reform redundant, yeah, not Tories.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, and he wants me to retire. Jenrick says we want Farage to retire.
That's ageist.
Well, there's not a cat's chance in hell of that, let me assure you. They're delusional. They're delusional. They think, let's get another leader, which, by the way, would be the 6th leader since 2016. Let's get a new leader, come out with some different policies, and somehow the public will all say, aren't they wonderful? We're going to come back to them. And what they don't understand is it's rather like a relationship. You know, if you keep letting the other side down, in the end, the relationship's broken. And we've had manifesto promises in 2010, 2015, 2017, 2019, all of which have been broken, and there's now a big swathe of 2019 Conservative voters who actually despise them, who feel really betrayed by them.
But there's a lot of people who despise you, right?
Well, that's true.
Ask them why they despise you, and they'll say because he's a racist. You'll ask him, what has he said that is racist? And then you hit trouble, because they can't really define it.
No, what's he said? You know, I've often said to people, what have I said? What have I said? And they can't put the finger on it. You know, thing about politics, of course, there will always be people that don't like you, and that's fine. But unlike Mr Jenrick and all the others, I've been utterly consistent for year after year in the principles and the things that I believe in. And, you know, they genuinely think that Reform voters are coming back to the Conservatives, and they're not. And something really quite big, I think, is going on out there. I'm not doing any deals with the Conservatives. I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them. Their brand is broken for many years to come. And remember, think back to when William Hague became the opposition leader to Tony Blair. You know, no one listened to what the Tories had to say for years, and we're back in that same kind of situation. They've made themselves irrelevant, trust has gone, and so my message to them is, sorry guys, but Reform is here to stay. And interestingly, we're now not even thinking about Conservative voters, we're thinking more about Labour voters.
OK, that is interesting. But I just want to stay with the Conservative candidates to start with, because I think Jenrick probably is the closest to aping many of your policies, talking about reversing VAT on school fees, talking about getting rid of the ECHR, for example. But you know, is he a threat to you? I mean, he wants to make you redundant, but he could persuade some of those who are traditional Conservative voters on those two policies alone, couldn't he?
This is Robert Remainer Jenrick, or
People can change their mind.
Better known as Robert Generic, because he'd stood for precisely nothing for years, who suddenly has discovered this new inner core. Now, it may be genuine, but when people have overnight political conversions, I'm always slightly suspicious. And let's say he does win on a policy of leaving the ECHR, his parliamentary party will never, ever support that. And that's their other problem. You know, one of the reasons the brand is broken is they've spent the last 5 years fighting with each other, rather than standing up and fighting with things in the country that matters. So, no, they're split, they're divided, their brand is ruined.
What you will enjoy being in, you know, you've got 5 MPs in Parliament at the moment. You're a long way from power. I know you've got ambitions of possibly being Prime Minister in the future, is that you don't have to fulfil any of your policies, something that I think Starmer's realising now is very, very difficult. With this idea of walking away from the ECHR, I want to ask you about this, because, as we said, Robert Jenrick's aping this suggestion. You've got people like Robert Buckland of the party saying this is making the party look weird, this isn't workable. If we walked away from the ECHR, we would lose the right to privacy, homosexuality protections that was decriminalised in Northern Ireland. Phone hacking was made illegal, and employers could no longer read employees' emails without consent. Let me just finish the point. These are the benefits of the ECHR. If we walked away, would we not lose those as well?
We've had something called Magna Carta. It's been knocking around for 800 years. It was the essential blueprint for individual liberty. It stopped the state chucking you in jail without charge. It gave us the most extraordinary rights. I mean, America, when America was founded, they thought, well, look at what the Brits have done.
Well, the Magna Carta didn't stop gay people being sent to jail in Northern Ireland, but the ECHR
We don't need a political court based in Strasbourg to tell us anything about liberty and freedom. And our system may not be perfect, but it's pretty much the best one any country in the world has ever invented.
OK. What about, I want to ask you about your professionalising of the party, because you've reached, there was some criticism that this was founded as a company rather than as a political party. I know that you're changing that, you're stepping away from being a majority stakeholder. You've got rid of some of your key people. When I think of you, I think of Gawain Towler. People might recognise him as, he looks like a member of the cast from Peaky Blinders, always sort of behind you. There's a picture of him there. He's been ousted now. Ben Habib, a regular on this programme, was a co-deputy of the party, also out. So you've been quite brutal in professionalising it.
When a small company becomes a big company, very often some of the most loyal people who've been there from the start in a small party don't quite fit the mould of what you're changing into. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate.
What didn't work about Gawain?
Personalities fit certain circumstances, but maybe not where we're trying to go. And I mean, he's worked for me for 20 years, so I wouldn't have a single bad word to say about him, and he's a friend, and he will remain one. We are trying to professionalise the party. We think the political opportunity ahead of us is enormous. What we can't afford to have are candidates that say completely outrageous, I mean, I believe in free speech, but completely outrageous things. And I've got to make sure we've vetted people properly. I've got to make sure we have a grassroots structure built around the country. And I'm trying to do what would normally take 10 years in 6 months between now and the county council elections next year. So, yeah, we have a lot on our plate. Have we become a more ruthless organisation since I brought Zia Youssef in as chairman? Yes, we have. But we have a very, very clear ambition of where we want to be. And in my past life with UKIP, that was about a cause. One individual cause. This is now much broader. This is about the country, the way in which we're governed, and we think we can find people.
No one can point the finger at you and say you're a one-party, a one-party issue for you there. But who is it, Nigel, who's voting for you? Who do you appeal to? Who are you looking to woo?
I just think good, ordinary, decent folk, regardless of whether they're centre, right, centre, left, regardless of class or geography. People, Eamonn, who are concerned that the values upon which our country, our communities, our society were built on are under attack, are under threat, a feeling that we're heading in the wrong direction, a feeling that the population explosion, I mean, 10 million since Mr Blair came to power, frankly, has devalued the quality of life of almost everybody. And I think what they want is the kind of leadership that is unafraid, the kind of leadership that doesn't go woke and doesn't say we've got to pander to this minority or that minority. We're very clear. You know, we couldn't care less what sexuality you are. We couldn't care less what colour you are. We've got to start. This idea that we put people into different boxes is actually divisive for the country. It's not bringing people together. And I think we've got the courage to say what the silent majority actually think. We want to get back the values based on family, community and country that make us what we are.
I want to ask you about Keir Starmer heading to Brussels today, a place you know very well. He wants to create what he calls a more mature...
He wants back in the European Union.
Well, I'm just asking whether or not you share his views that we need a mature relationship with the European Union, that perhaps it needs a reset. And he's under huge pressure, particularly around this deal on youth mobility. You claim to be attracting younger voters. You know, how will you square that with them if they're thinking about voting reform? A lot of them wish they could continue their studies abroad.
How many youngsters go on gap years to Frankfurt? Hardly any.
Well, it's not so much Andes as part of their degrees.
No. But they go and climb the Andes, or they go out to the Far East. The world's changed. This idea that my mum and dad had, that Europe was all terribly exciting 50 years ago, it's gone.
They should be able to go there, surely, and do that. I mean, why?
Do you know what?
Not fussed about it.
Do you know what? I honestly think it's a pretty marginal issue. I think the real problem is that the Conservative Party didn't take us far enough away from membership of the European Union, which makes it very easy for Keir Starmer just to ape every new piece of European law. And we'll finish up at the end of a Starmer government. It will be Brino. It will be Brexit in name only.
Come the next election, who is your main opposition? Who is your enemy? Is it the Conservative Party? Or is it the sitting government?
No, it's Labour. There's no question about it. It is Labour, and it is those traditional working-class seats in South Wales, in the Midlands, in the north of England, in many cases, seats that have been Labour since the end of the First World War, where their communities, those old Labour voting communities, are so far detached from the North London elite that the Labour Party has become.
The winter fuel allowance?
I wouldn't, and I'll tell you why. Because we are paying the most expensive energy bills in the world. I mean, can you believe our electricity prices are 75% higher than America's, 33% higher than France's, and the more we, and it's a slightly separate issue, but the more we go down the net zero route, the more wind turbines we build, the higher people's bills become. And Ed Miliband's plan for us to head, towards being carbon neutral with electricity generation, it means 10 years of rising prices. So for that reason, above all, I would not have done it.
There was a lot of praise yesterday for the closing of our last coal-fired power station. And I actually was looking at it and thinking, is this all too soon? Why are people rejoicing about this?
Yeah.
What is the benefit here?
Yeah. The end of coal, Boris Johnson told us. Do you know, this year, in 2024, across the planet, we're going to burn 8 billion tonnes of coal. I'll say that again. 8 billion tonnes. Yeah, 8 billion tonnes. In 2024, the world will burn more coal than it's ever burned in its entirety of its history. Meanwhile, we closed down a coal-fired power station, which is a very useful backup if renewables don't produce the goods. We have seen the Port Talbot primary steelworks close, our second-to-last primary steelworks close. Harland and Wolff, of course, in very, very big trouble in a part of the world that you know very well. The biggest refinery in the UK, Grangemouth, closing down. And the primary reason for this deindustrialisation is our energy prices are too high. And I think both parties are completely out of touch with the public on this. Do we want to save the planet? Yes. But you know what? We can't do it if the others go on burning lots of coal.
Farage, I could talk to you about so many things, and I want to keep going, but I have to ask you, are you going to the States for the election, and is Trump toast?
I'll be there on the night of November the 5th.
But are you going to be involved in some campaigning?
No, because I've become an MP.
You can't do that.
So my priorities have had to shift and change for obvious reasons. I've got a constituency to represent in Clacton, etc. So that is now my priority. I spoke to Trump on the phone 2 weeks ago. Clearly, however tough he may look in public, to have 2 near assassination attempts in the space of a few weeks, it has to affect somebody.
Yeah.
I still think he's going to win, but boy, it's going to be tight.
And if he doesn't win, will he concede?
If he doesn't win, I would guess that's the end of Donald in politics. He's nearly 80.
OK, all right.
Nigel, thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you for coming in.
Talking to you, Nigel Farage, Reform UK. He's saying it as it is. He's painting the future that he wants and he thinks you will be involved in. Will you? Back after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Antrim, the A26 is closed near to Clock after an accident on Monday night. The M65 in Lancashire is closed each way between junctions 8 and 10 between Accrington and Burnley after an accident. There are long delays as you divert. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, the outside lanes closed eastbound just after junction 24 at Ainley Top after an accident, with queues from junction 23. At Huddersfield on the M1 in Derbyshire, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed northbound for an investigation near to the Tibshelf services between junctions 28 and 29 near Mansfield. It's taking around an hour in delays as you divert. On the M25 in Surrey, 2 lanes are closed anti-clockwise at junction 13 at Staines for repairs after an accident. There are queues from junction 17 at Maple Cross. And in London, the North Circular is closed eastbound off the Cooksbury interchange at Chingford after an accident. There are long delays towards there from Palmer's Green.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Coity's here. Good to see you. What have you got for us?
Champions League last night. Arsenal were very good. Beat PSG 2-0.
Well done for saying that.
You know what? It didn't hurt. It was fine. I can say it. I'm completely in the middle. So and anyway, it was a good result for Arsenal 2-0 against PSG.
And breathe.
OK, Slovan Bratislava, who are just happy to be there, to be honest with you. Their fans were cheering all the way through, even though they lost 4-0 at home to Manchester City. But the really uncomfortable result is Celtic fans who are not going to be very happy. There was a time during the game against Borussia Dortmund yesterday in Germany where they went 1-1 and things are looking OK. They got a penalty and it's all looking all right.
OK.
But then Borussia Dortmund went on and scored another 6 and lost 7-1.
Oh.
Brendan Rodgers, the manager of Celtic, he's not really going to be wanting to go in and speak about it, but that's his job. This is what he had to say.
It was a tough watch, to be honest. We weren't quite at our best, and they showed why they're a top team. So we didn't make the start that we wanted, and then. I've just said to the players afterwards, I don't think I've been involved in a game where I felt that every single mistake that we made got punished. And that's the level. It's any misplaced pass or moment that they had, it just seemed to end up in the back of the net.
He is one disappointed man.
Not surprising, is it? Do you want to do some birthdays?
Yeah.
Do you know it was Julie Andrews' birthday yesterday?
Yes, I know. I had it down yesterday.
I actually don't know how old she was.
She played up front for Huddersfield Town for a couple of years, so I was going to have her in.
89,
I bet she still looks amazing.
Do you know where she's from?
No.
Walton-on-Thames.
Is she?
Yes, and I was behind. I thought that they should have put a statue up of Julie Andrews in Walton-on-Thames instead of the Rose Centre or whatever it is. But
what would you have her as Mary Poppins with the umbrella?
Yeah.
That maybe they should still think about that.
I think the habit with the arms outstretched.
Oh, do you think so?
Yeah.
Spinning round. What about if you hit a button and she spins round and maybe that's a little bit too much.
Who is it today?
Well, let's have a look, shall we? I think we got some pictures of some birthdays and some famous sporting people whose birthday is today. Our first one, please. Do we have it? There we are.
Oh, can't see his face. Who's
you
that?
Can't really see. Bit questionable there, what he's doing. There we are. Alison Becker, the goalkeeper at Liverpool. How old today? Difficult with a beard, but what would you say?
31.
31? Eamon?
28.
32 is the right answer. Let's go with another one. I've got another one. I've got a couple. Now, who's that there? Not the lady on the left. That's Sir Trevor Brooking.
No.
Sir Trevor Brooking.
Didn't recognise him in that light.
I know, it's a strange picture of him there. I know these.
Gentleman and a scholar.
He is a lovely man, Sir Trevor Brooking.
85.
85 for Sir Trevor.
I don't think he's that old. I would think 80.
76.
Oh gosh,
You've both done
God,
him
I'm
a
so
huge
sorry.
disservice. Sorry, Sir Trevor, about that. God, we got another. I think we got another couple.
Excuse me.
We'll go showbiz. Since we said about
Sting.
we said about Julie Andrews. How old is Sting today? Do you think?
Sting would be...
Sting looks great for his age. Let's be honest.
60?
No, I'd say he's about 66.
73.
Stop.
Sting is 73.
But you see, but that's the advantage of tantric sex.
It is, yeah. Keeps him looking young. Yeah, keeps him looking young.
Do you find tantric sex works for you?
No, but I do find when I think of Sting, I think of tantric sex.
Do you really?
They are always...
And the thing is, Isabel's 71. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
How does she... Right, one more, just one more. This is a good one. Right, one from the 80s. Who is this? How old is he? Oh, look at that.
It's you.
You know what? That's Phil Oakey. Human League. Human League. Phil Oakey, don't you want me?
Don't you want me?
Don't you want...
He'll be 60.
How old is he today?
65.
65? Isabel, don't look so surprised. You remember Human League?
Yeah. But I don't know how old he is.
What do you
He
reckon?
looks young there.
See, that he had a hairstyle, it was long on one side and short on the other. That was the look.
I'll go 60.
60? He's 69 today.
Wow.
He's in his 70th year.
Wow, I'd love to see a picture of him today.
Well, he doesn't... Well, put it this way, it's not not that dissimilar, but there's no hair there whatsoever.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. We're back after this.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're talking catchphrases and jingles because, of course, instantly recognisable and sometimes a little annoying in the case of the Go Compare one, perhaps. An iconic advertising jingle can stay in your head all day and sometimes stand the test of time. Sound expert and music designer for some of the world's most renowned companies, Michael Boumendil, joins us now. Good morning, Michael. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
First of all, what is the secret ingredient, the secret recipe for a hit jingle that stands the test of time over the decades?
Well, I have to say that secret 100 years ago is not the secret today, because today all the brands are using music. So the first secret is to stand out, is to make something different, to do something interesting. The other thing I believe is to do something that is true to the brand that is talking to you. You know, it's not only about the memorability, but it's about telling something about the brand. You know, when I hear you, your voice, your tone of voice says not only who you are, I can recognize your voice, but it says a lot about your mood, your personality. So the other reason why we make successful jingles is because they're catchy, because they're different, but also because they say something to us that is interesting, and finally keeping this link between the brand and the customers.
Michael, tell us about your involvement in the new Maybelline jingle. This makes me, I mean, I haven't heard it, but it makes me a little bit sad because I was an avid Maybelline concealer user for many years. Other brands are available, but the jingle was the main reason why I got bought into it.
You don't have to be sad, because we kept most of the legacy.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, we're going through the papers in the company of Fraser Myers and Emma Wolfe, and I'm just taking a look at our list here. Is it this one? Labour received gifts worth $1 million from betting companies. Emma, this is page 4 of The Times, and this is Starmer and 3 of his cabinet ministers. Tell us more.
Yeah, well, we know the Prime Minister's been mired in controversy and scandal around, you know, personal gifts from Lord Ali and clothes and glasses and personal shopper for his wife and the use of penthouses and various things like that. But I was actually astonished at the level of donations. This is a story in the Times today about the links with Labour from betting companies. So Rachel Reeves accepted musical theatre tickets from the Betting and Gaming Council and £20,000 donation to her private office. Jonathan Reynolds, Business Secretary, got sports tickets and hospitality. Louise Hay, the Transport Secretary, got, again, sports tickets and hospitality. Starmer also received $25,000 from Bet365, huge gambling company.
This is so wrong. I'll just have to interrupt you.
In support of his leadership campaign. But wait for this, if I may. Derek Webb, who I've never heard of, is a casino entrepreneur. He gave $750,000. So
God.
he made up the majority of this £1 million donation, £750,000 to Labour this year. And I don't think most people know that.
No such thing as a free lunch.
There isn't. What are they getting in return?
Remember there was this idea to turn Blackpool into a big tax-free betting sort of area, which under Tony Blair, and it didn't happen. But the thing about, I do think morally you've got to take a stand against betting. And I've been asked to do a number of betting ads throughout the years, and I've always said no, because I've always had this compulsion that it's addictive,
it is an
it's
addiction.
bad, it's over the front of football shirts, and it shouldn't be. That you cannot turn on a football programme in this country without it being involved with Bet365 or whatever it happens to
One
be.
thing's for sure, the gambling industry at the moment are very keen on Labour. I mean, you know, we can ask all sorts of questions about, was it for your private office, was it personal donation, what's going on? But they are giving a lot of money to Labour.
One thing we should point out, though, is that Derek Webb, who you mentioned, he is a casino entrepreneur, but he is actually uses a lot of his money to fund anti-gambling campaigns. So it's interesting that almost like both sides in this war are being giving money.
Fraser, that's what they do. That's
called hedging your bet.
That's called offsetting.
He's getting more from it than he's giving to it.
I'm sure that's the case. And I think what is extraordinary is that, you know, everyone understands that political parties need donations to be kept afloat. They need to pay staff. They need to run campaigns. They need to buy advertising. But what is the function of, you know, giving people freebies like this? That is not an operational expense.
Nothing is free.
Nothing is free.
Why are they giving nearly $1 million to Labour?
And you know, one of the things that I noticed in that was £700 a £700 dinner for Wes Streeting from the company that runs the National Lottery.
That Cleverly was asked whether he would accept gifts, you know, in the future, and he said yes, he would continue to accept gifts, including hospitality, from time to time. The problem in this whole area, he said, was the hypocrisy, because Starmer had been so anti this.
So clear about
Do you agree
cleaning
that
up
that's
politics?
the problem, the hypocrisy, or is it actually the buying influence that's the problem? And if we have a problem with lobbying, effectively, political lobbying, you know, do we need to talk about that? Because both parties are benefiting, all parties benefiting from it. We can talk about the donations going to reform as well this morning.
Yeah, look, it's both, isn't it? But I think you know, it's hurting Starmer more because he was so holier than thou. But you know, it still is people still see this as a problem. I think the freebies are worse because there is no justification for it. As I said, parties do need donations. You do need to have someone bankrolling political parties.
Yes, but
you do not need a freebie, a free Taylor Swift ticket.
And TV companies and radio companies and broadcasters in general have got to be aware of who they take their money from and what what programmes they place them around, like sport in general being... I mean, it's ridiculous, sport being sponsored by alcohol. It really is ridiculous. But, however, that's a debate for another day.
Fraser, can we talk about this story, which is online, didn't make any papers? This happened 10 o'clock in the capital yesterday morning, just down the road
AM.
in Soho, 10 in the morning, A gunshot at a taxi. Who was in the taxi?
Ian Hislop, the editor of Private Eye and the stalwart of Have I Got News for You. The police are keeping an open mind about the motive, but I think, you know, anyone like that being caught up in a gunshot at 10 a.m. in central London...
We're not sure if the gunshot was aimed at him or aimed at the taxi or aimed somewhere else.
It seems like a pure accident and a pure coincidence from the reporting. But, you know, that is extraordinary. This is the level of disorder that we're dealing with in London. I think that's what it speaks to. I doubt that it's a rival magazine editor trying to...
Or just somebody offended by jokes.
Someone offended by Private Eye's jokes.
Who knows, in this day and age.
Yeah.
But 10 a.m. in the morning.
And another story that I've got is this acid attack on a schoolgirl in London, in Notting Hill.
We were on air yesterday morning. Life-changing injuries, they expected. What's the update on that, Emma?
So, yeah, the girl seems to be... She was a 14-year-old girl. This was outside her school in Notting Hill, which is a quite affluent area of West London.
Quite mixed.
Yeah, mixed, of course. But, yeah, this is a 14-year-old girl, 16-year-old boy. The boy seems to have less severe injuries, but the girl's injuries are still described as potentially life-changing. The suspect escaped on an e-scooter. The very frightening scene. Emergency services were there, ambulances were there. The students at the academy are being offered counselling. The school has now reopened. But, I mean, this kind of thing is happening every day. Gunshots being fired in the centre of town, you know, people throwing acid. I think we haven't got to the bottom of this thing about acid and corrosive substances being used as a weapon and being freely available.
Awful. Absolutely awful. Do you know what to do if you got affected by an acid attack?
Oh, God.
I think we need to educate.
I don't want to give the wrong advice.
Are you meant to put water on it or not? I don't know.
I think it's water, but I don't want to do that as a public service broadcasting there. I actually don't know the specifics. We should probably all educate ourselves on that.
Well, here's a clever one. Oasis concerts. Fraser, so Oasis fans are said to have buried bags of drugs in a park 10 months ahead of the planned concert.
Ridiculous. Clever. I mean, this is the most extreme lengths I've seen people go to try to sneak drugs into a gig or a festival. I actually worked on the door of a festival a couple of years ago. People would put stuff inside bread. People would find all kinds of ways to sneak things in, but burying them 10 months ahead of the gig.
And let's hope for heavy, heavy rainstorms and lots of mud in the next 10 months. So it'll all get mushed.
Appreciate it. Your two are mushed now. Thank you very much indeed. Back after this.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having a bit of a drab start today, but it should get a little brighter as the day goes on. Many of us will be dry as well, but there's still a keen and cold, gusty wind blowing along the east coast of England, and quite a lot of cloud across England and Wales this morning. Some outbreaks of rain here and there. We'll continue with some showers across East Anglia and the southeast, particularly for Essex and Suffolk and Kent. They'll be on and off through the day. Elsewhere, though, many places dry. Should brighten up a little bit over Wales, northern England, and sunny spells for most of the day across Scotland and Northern Ireland. On the chilly side, particularly with that wind coming in from the North Sea, quite gusty conditions at times for Wales and southwest England also. And throughout the day, we will continue to see these showers just drifting in across East Anglia, maybe some getting into the home counties, certainly across Kent, a few heavy showers keeping going. But further north and west, we'll see that cloud breaking up over Wales and northern England, and by and large a fine day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's a bit chilly first thing, and temperatures struggling a little bit, even with some sunshine through the afternoon, and quite quickly this evening those temperatures will be falling away once more because the winds are pretty light here, and the winds, that noticeable and cold breeze along the east coast, will also tend to ease through the night. Still a few showers getting into parts of Kent, East Anglia, maybe some returning to Lincolnshire as well, but away from eastern England, a dry night, a clear night, and those temperatures really dipping down, well down into single figures, even in towns and cities. So rural spots likely to see some pockets of frost over northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Could be a little bit of mist here and there early doors, but that should disappear fairly sharply. And for many, it's a good-looking day tomorrow. Still a bit more cloud and one or two showers for Kent. The odd shower is possible elsewhere over the Midlands and northern England, but most places dry and bright tomorrow. Bit more in the way of sunshine. Those winds a little bit lighter, so feeling a touch warmer with temperatures in the teens.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Antrim, the A26 is closed each way near Clock after an accident on Monday night. The M65 in Lancashire is closed each way between junctions 8 and 10, between Accrington and Burnley after an accident. There are long delays as you divert. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, the outside lane's closed to eastbound just after junction 24 at Ainley Top after an accident. It's taking around 50 minutes in queues from junction 22 at Rishworth Moor. On the M5 in Worcestershire, 2 lanes are closed northbound where a vehicle overturned between junctions 4 and 3 from Bromsgrove to Hales Owen, causing delays. On the M25 in Surrey, 2 out of 5 lanes are closed anti-clockwise for repairs after an accident and spillage at junction 13 at Staines, with queues from junction 17 at Maple Cross. And in London, the North Circular is closed eastbound off the Cooks Ferry interchange at Chingford after an accident, with long delays towards there from Palmer's Green. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
24 hours that put the Middle East on the brink.
The Defence Secretary confirms British forces helped shoot down Iranian missiles heading towards Israel.
Well, this comes after Tehran fired a wave of at least 200 rockets, including dozens of ballistic missiles at Israeli cities.
Sir Keir Starmer addressed the nation following the attack. This is what he had to say.
Make no mistake, Britain stands full square against such violence. We support Israel's reasonable demand for the security of its people.
More on this from Mark White. Mark, is this our fight now?
Well, it certainly was last night in terms of the Defence Secretary saying that our troops were involved in shooting down some of those missiles.
Tory leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch slams civil servants, suggesting 10% of them should be locked up.
Robert Jenrick and James Cleverly head out at Reform UK. They dubbed the party a pale imitation of the Tories. Nigel Farage had this to say.
They're delusional. They're delusional. They think, let's get another leader, which, by the way, would be the 6th leader since 2016. Let's get a new leader, come out with some different policies, and somehow the public will all say, aren't they wonderful? We're going to come back to them.
Prime Minister set to travel to Brussels in a bid to improve relations with the EU. He aims to try and deliver a broad-based security pact, secure our borders and tackle trade barriers.
A cold wind blowing today and a bit of a drab start, but generally getting a little bit brighter with some sunny spells coming through and drier and finer weather on the way for most of us through Thursday as well. Join me later for a full forecast.
On this Wednesday morning, a very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster and you're tuned in to GB News Breakfast.
The big story that has developed overnight, both Britain and the United States have confirmed they conducted operations to shoot down over 180 Iranian missiles fired at Israel.
Defence Minister John Healey said British forces played their part in attempts to prevent further escalation in the Middle East. And Sir Keir Starmer addressed the nation last night and had this to say.
The Iranian regime has launched over 200 ballistic missiles at civilian targets in Israel. It's too soon to assess the impact fully, but I utterly condemn this attempt by the Iranian regime to harm innocent Israelis, to escalate this incredibly dangerous situation and push the region ever closer to the brink. It cannot be tolerated. We stand with Israel and we recognise her right to self-defence in the face of this aggression. Iran must stop these attacks, together with its proxies like Hezbollah. Iran has menaced the Middle East for far too long. Chaos and destruction brought not just to Israel, but to the people they live amongst in Lebanon and beyond. Make no mistake, Britain stands full square against such violence. We support Israel's reasonable demand for the security of its people. I am deeply concerned that the region is on the brink, and I'm deeply concerned about the risk of miscalculation.
Strong words from the Prime Minister. Here with his take, Mark White.
Well, a worrying indication coming from the Israeli ambassador to the UK this morning, who has said that Iran will pay a major price for launching these ballistic missiles at Israel last night, meaning, she said, that Iran would not be able to launch such strikes again. So an indication, perhaps, that the response from Israel is going to be of a magnitude greater than the response we saw against Iran when it fired missiles and drones at Israel in April. Then there was a limited response that it seems Iran could live with. If there is a very significant response this time from Israel, then we could be in that tit-for-tat response where we see an escalation into a very bloody conflict.
And if there is that escalation, I suppose there's the question about mission creep. We know that British involvement has been confirmed from the government, and actually it's just worth explaining whilst we look at these pictures exactly what we're seeing, because what looks like suddenly these missiles coming through the sky suddenly lighting up, these ones are landing and hitting the ground, but there's some footage we showed there where they look like sort of shooting stars. That's actually the Iron Dome intercepting, having used radar, those missiles that are coming, some 12 minutes away from Iran.
Yes, absolutely, and it's not just the Iron Dome. There are an array of different types of missiles as part of the aerial defence array that Israel has. And yes, you're right, those earlier images are fragments, basically, after the missiles have taken out these ballistic missiles, but others very clearly impacting the ground. Now, what we understand has happened is that sophisticated system with its radars can track the trajectory of these missiles, so they know if a missile is going to land in open ground and away from a populated area, then they're usually just allowed to impact the ground, because they don't want to waste a very expensive missile when there could be many others coming over to populated areas.
Do we expect a quieter night in terms of Tel Aviv and Israel in terms of these missiles coming in? And if so, does attention shift back to this incursion into southern Lebanon and what's happening there? You know, has there been further violence on the border there?
I think it's likely we won't see anything else from Iran until we know what the response from Israel has been. The indications are that Israel could respond within the next few days. And as I say, depending on the level of that response, Iran might feel compelled to respond again. In terms of the UK involvement, we know that RAF Typhoons operating out of RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus were up over the skies in the region, supported by an aerial refuelling tanker last night. So the indications are that they were the ones tasked with helping to take out some of these missiles. The US did that with their destroyers in the region as well, taking out at least a dozen missiles.
OK, and in terms of any hope of peace, you know, anytime soon?
Well, you said, you know, attention turning back to the south of Lebanon. That's right. There have been more intense airstrikes in southern Lebanon and the capital Beirut overnight. Israel is sending more troops up to its northern border as that incursion, which is a limited incursion at the moment, is expected to intensify.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Let's go to economics expert Justin Urquhart-Stewart on all of this. Justin, what does this mean? What's the fallout going to be for the rest of us in day-to-day life?
Well, what it's certainly going to mean is, I'm afraid, a fallback in terms of any level of confidence that we had in the economy, be it domestic or internationally. What you'll find is actually investors will start holding back. People will start actually saying, right, we'll go for more defensive areas. For instance, things you'll probably see the price of gold going up. We haven't seen too much reaction to the price of oil yet, but I would be too surprised if that starts moving up as well. And you'll see some of the particularly defense sectors, things like government gilts as well, and particularly US gilts and the US dollar, as people retreat to areas that they regard as being more secure in times of nerves. But for us as individuals at the moment, it's just going to be a matter of confidence. That's what runs an economy. And whilst we've got our leaders not telling us clearly actually what's going to be happening, because they don't know either, I'm afraid confidence is going to be at a premium.
So it's a volatile moment then, is what you're saying to us in terms of the markets. There's a little bit of uncertainty going on, because a lot of people, when we talk about the Middle East, think this is a far-flung conflict, doesn't have much impact on me, but it does in terms of taxation, in terms of the cost of goods that we get in the shops. If our trade routes are exposed to vulnerabilities, as they say, oil at the moment, as you say, not affected, but whether or not our savings get impacted. I mean, we could all be a lot worse off without peace in the Middle East.
We could all be a lot worse off. But let's put things into perspective. We have had dreadful situations like this before. So the moment is actually, now is the time not to try and panic. Now is the time actually just to try and take a clear view as to what's going on, not take extra risks. We don't have to start stocking up with things like that. Let's hope that the politicians can actually see something more logical and clear to actually get round a table and talk. Seems a distant thought at this particular moment. But on the other hand, it is in everyone's interest to try and make sure this actually does start calming down. We start taking a step back. How that happens, we don't know. What you will, though, see is the global economy still coming under pressure in terms of not much growth, probably slightly stalling. That doesn't mean we go into a recession, doesn't mean we have a disaster. It just does mean, though, that everybody at the moment is nervous, and therefore everyone holds hard for the time being. So don't panic, just stay exactly where you are for the moment. And in terms of your investments, remember, they're for the longer term, not for short-term punting.
Keep calm and carry on.
Yeah, thanks for putting this in the picture, Justin. Appreciate it. Thank you. We'll leave it there. Conservative leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch is facing criticism for suggesting 1 in 10 civil servants are very, very bad at their jobs. In fact, they're so bad at their jobs, they should be
jailed, apparently. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick and James Cleverly have both taken aim at Reform UK and Nigel Farage, claiming they want to make the party redundant. Well, we spoke to him earlier about this.
Want Farage to retire?
That's ageist.
Well, there's not a cat's chance in hell of that, let me assure you. They're delusional. They're delusional. They think, let's get another leader, which, by the way, would be the 6th leader since 2016. Let's get a new leader, come out with some different policies, and somehow the public will all say, aren't they wonderful? We're going to come back to them. And what they don't understand is it's rather like a relationship. You know, if you keep letting the other side down, in the end, the relationship's broken. And we've had manifesto promises in 2010, 2015, 2017, 2019, all of which have been broken, and there's now a big swathe of 2019 Conservative voters who actually despise them.
Well, let's go to Birmingham and get some reaction to that from our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, final day of the final political conference of the season. We've had lots of people on the programme this morning, from Nigel Farage, we've seen Nadine Dorries, we've had Grant Shapps. What's the consensus? Who's come out looking good from Tory conference?
Well, it depends absolutely who you speak to. I think the contest feels much more open, though, than it did at the beginning. And just to pick up on what Nigel Farage said in that clip, I think he does make a very, very valid point that I'm not clear that the Conservatives realise the depth of the hole that they are in. The mood is quite cheery here. There's plenty of people think that they could come back and win in 2029 if they pick the right leader. Now, Robert Jenrick in particular wants to appeal to reform voters, talking about bringing immigration down, etc. Now, he has said about reform voters that they are our people, and that he's setting out to make Nigel Farage redundant, but will former Conservative voters, after 14 years of broken promises, come back to the Conservatives? Is it as easy as that? And, you know, Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick, both the front runners, have both got themselves into hot water this conference. Kemi Badenoch with the maternity pay comments, the comments joking about putting civil service in jail. She's certainly getting cut through, but whether that's helpful or not is not quite clear. But Robert Jenrick too, there is a real row about the comments he made in this campaign video saying that British special forces were killing rather than capturing terrorists because of European laws, basically. James Cleverly, who served in the military, Tom Tugendhat, who served in the military, and Grant Shapps, the former Defence Secretary, have all come out condemning those comments. Tom Tugendhat, in particular, says that basically people who haven't served in the military really shouldn't comment on things that they don't understand what they're talking about, and particularly that somebody that he knew that he served with was featured in one of these videos. So a lot of anger about those comments. So Badenoch and Jenrick certainly are still the front runners, but the question is, it's quite tight, and only a few MPs going one way or another could change the whole dynamic. So still all to play for.
Catherine.
And hopefully you'll be saying thanks very much to us if you enter the Great British Giveaway, our autumn cash boost coming your way off
£36,000. Here's how.
And good luck.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're joined by Lewis Oakley and Esther Stanhope. And Lewis, let's start with free gear Keir, shall we? It's been the story of the week, and apparently it's led to, well, calamity in the polls.
Yeah, so he has dropped by 26 points in the opinion polls. And, I mean, it's just been sort of going down from day one. He didn't even start that high. But, yeah, this is just bad optics. As we say, like, he hasn't done anything illegal or wrong. Everything was declared, but at the same time you're telling people they don't get their winter fuel allowance and you're there walking off with your swag bag. It's just not a good look. And even, you know, I was thinking as well, the optics of them trying to clamp down on MPs having second jobs. You know, any of those could turn around and say, well, actually, we have to pay for our own clothes. I just think it's just bad optics that he's had. And, you know, we've got those comparisons of Sunak in the stands. He's just sat amongst the people. And
Prince William goes to Villa games, albeit in the director's box, but it's not an 8k per game seat. And by the way, can I just mention, this isn't just an isolated Labour incident. Since the start of their tenure, they were accused of filling the civil service with previous Labour donors, previous Labour aides, people who worked for Labour Together think tank. The civil service is meant to be politically neutral, and they bypassed a lot of procedures to get people into their positions, not least the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who parachuted Ian Caulfield, his name was, who donated £5,000 personally to her, and then he ended up in the Treasury with a 175k a year job. Yes, he did resign after it was revealed in the Times, but it does make you wonder, you know, you've spent years having a go at the Tories for this, and you do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's full of hypocrisy, and also the whole Sue Gray thing, and they were slagging off the Conservatives for not towing the line, and now they're being hypocrites because now they're taking freebies.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, police are investigating a suspected gunshot that hit the window of a taxi carrying the Private Eye editor, Ian Hislop.
This was yesterday morning at 10 o'clock, and the black cab driver told detectives he thought a bullet hit his vehicle when it came to a standstill in traffic in central London.
Well, we're joined now by retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville. This is shortly after we heard about an acid attack outside a school in the capital. Paints a picture of a very violent city. Can you tell us any more about this incident and, you know, whether or not you think this was a personal attack or who just got caught up as a bystander in something else?
Well, this is what the police will be looking into, of course, because the actual taxi was in Westminster and it was very near the Private Eye offices. Now, Ian Hislop and Private Eye are quite fearless, aren't they, in attacking people in power, those with influence. I mean, the litigation against them's quite incredible, but they never stop, so it's the epitome of the free press. So if there has been an attack on Ian Hislop, this is a really bad thing. But, of course, what the police will be doing at the moment is there'll be a ballistics and forensic experts examining the cab to see if it was a bullet or something else. And of course, the area is awash with CCTV and Ring doorbells and all sorts of other recording devices, because the Met will really want to know if this has been an attack on a journalist in the capital, because that would be a very, very bad thing.
I mean, you say that the Met want to know and the public will want to know that as well. Indeed, all of us journalists concerned that we could be living in a more intolerant country than we ever thought we might do. Has he said anything about this publicly?
Well, as far as there's nothing publicly been said. I've read several articles on this, and it's the details are not. There's not very fulfilling. But, of course, what the police officers will be doing, they'll be questioning Ian Hislop to see if there's been any particular threats made to him. They'll be looking at social media. An intelligence team will be looking at any potential leads to show that there is a credible threat. Because if there is a credible threat to Ian Hislop, then they'll have to give him a briefing on safety and security. And, of course, as you've indicated, that you two are both journalists, and if there is evidence that this has been a targeted attempt on his life, then other people will have to take things into account as well.
OK, thanks very much indeed for your thoughts this morning. That is on reflection on that understood to be a gun attack in Soho yesterday morning at 10 a.m. with the Private Eye editor Ian Hislop inside that
was
taxi.
Was it an attack on the taxi? Was it an attack on the taxi driver? Was it an attack on someone else that missed? Was it on Hislop himself?
On journalism?
So many questions. Was it somebody fooling about with a gun, or was this quite deliberate? And when you look at what Ian Hislop does for a living, he could have a lot of people who are very upset with them.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Unlike Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce, who will be fronting Britain's newsroom coming up at 9:30. Good morning to you.
More commonly just upset with each other. But of course he's not here.
Oh, tell us more.
He's in Birmingham. I've actually quite missed having Andrew next to me this week. He is, of course, up in Birmingham still. We've got Tom Harwood there. We've got Christopher Hope there as well, because we're going to have a lot of reaction this morning from the wannabe leaders of the Conservative Party, who are all setting out their stall during our show this morning. They're going to be on stage in Birmingham. They've all put together a little 2-minute video saying who they all are, and then we're going to hear from them. So it's going to be a morning to get your tea and your toast and assess what you think the potential leaders of the
It's difficult because, you know, you listen to one and you think, yes, very, very good. I don't like him or I don't like her. And then you listen to them and you think, actually, that makes a lot of sense there. So it's very, very hard to differentiate.
The differentiate, I think, is the word, Eamonn, because I'm interested to see what the points of difference will be between them. Where do they stand on immigration? Are they going to be clear about that? What is Kemi Vade not going to say about maternity leave with her gaffe earlier in the week, you might say? You know, Jenrick has taken a stronger position on migration. He will no doubt come out on that. But I suspect they will all play with a fairly safe bat.
Yeah.
They won't say anything too
that would turn me off. I like the idea of a bit of a character or someone who can rise above things with their own personality. And there are very few
And
in the
at
lineup
this stage,
like
they're
that.
not actually appealing to any of us, unless you are privately Tory members, which I don't think you are.
That's right.
You know, our thoughts and what we think of them is totally relevant. They are entirely appealing to who will ultimately decide, which is 100,000 people.
But I think that's always an interesting sort of balance to get, isn't it, when they're talking at these sorts of events? Because the public are are also watching. And I think they've got to talk to, as you say, Isabel, they've got to talk to people in the room, the members who might vote for them and the other MPs. But also they have to always have one eye on what the public are thinking, because that next election will come around quicker than you think. You know, it will. I mean, who knows what's going to happen to Starmer? You know, so I think it's going to be an interesting morning anyway. And there's also a really interesting case in the courts this morning. This is a Christian teacher who was dismissed from her job for sharing on Facebook that she didn't think obligatory sex education around LGBT should be taught in primary schools, and she lost her job for it. She's taken it through various levels of appeal, and we've got one this morning which we will have the result of at about 10:30. That's worth watching.
Obviously, things are getting more serious in the Middle East. British involvement there. You'll be reflecting those developments. And the Prime Minister off to Brussels as well to discuss the relationship with the EU.
Yeah, and you know, I'd love to know what our viewers think this morning, but watching Keir Starmer talk about supporting Israel, we will stand with them. I want the British public to really let us know whether we do want to be getting more involved in that Middle Eastern war. So we are going to be talking about that as well.
Have a good one, Bev. Thank you very much indeed. You have yourselves a good day for the rest of the day, and we'll see you next Monday.
Yeah, and here's your forecast.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having a bit of a drab start today, but it should get a little brighter as the day goes on. Many of us will be dry as well, but there's still a keen and cold, gusty wind blowing along the east coast of England, and quite a lot of cloud across England and Wales this morning. Some outbreaks of rain here and there. We'll continue with some showers across East Anglia and the south east, particularly for Essex and Suffolk and Kent. They'll be on and off through the day. Elsewhere, though, many places dry. It should brighten up a little bit over Wales, northern England, and sunny spells for most of the day across Scotland and Northern Ireland. On the chilly side, particularly with that wind coming in from the North Sea, quite gusty conditions at times for Wales and southwest England also. And throughout the day, we will continue to see these showers just drifting in across East Anglia, maybe some getting into the home counties, certainly across Kent, a few heavy showers keeping going. But further north and west, we'll see that cloud breaking up over Wales and northern England, and by and large a fine day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's a bit chilly first thing, and temperatures struggling a little bit, even with some sunshine through the afternoon, and quite quickly this evening those temperatures will be falling away once more because the winds are pretty light here. And the winds,
somebody said it looks like
breeze along the east coast will also tend to ease through the night. Still a few showers getting into parts of Kent, East Anglia, maybe some returning to Lincolnshire as well, but away from eastern England, a dry night, a clear night, and those temperatures really dipping down, well down into single figures, even in towns and cities. So rural spots are likely to see some pockets of frost over northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Could be a little bit of mist here and there early doors, but that should disappear fairly sharply. And for many, it's a good-looking day tomorrow. Still a bit more cloud and one or two showers for Kent. The odd shower is possible elsewhere over the Midlands and northern England, but most places dry and bright tomorrow. Bit more in the way of sunshine. Those winds a little bit lighter, so feeling a touch warmer with temperatures in the teens.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely.